to do.
It's really part of it's just
I didn't see
your in-house.
an answer on that, so.
Yeah, I thought the first one I thought he responded to everything.
Yep, it's a good appearance.
All right, the City of Marine City Commission meeting is called to order on Thursday, February 2nd at 7:00 p.m. And can we have a moment of silence to send our positive thoughts and prayers to those in our community that need our support? And now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Bryson.
Here.
Commissioner Hendrick. Here. Commissioner Hilfrink.
Here.
Commissioner Clausen.
Here.
Commissioner Rohrig.
Here.
Commissioner Ross.
Here.
Mayor Vandebosch.
Here.
Interim City Manager Heslop.
Here.
Item 4 for approving the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda with 2 amendments? First, to add 11D proclamation for Ron Glodich, and the second to add item 11B under closed session to discuss the severance package related to Holly Tapman.
Madam Mayor, we do not need closed session B at this time.
Okay. And then can I get a motion then with just the added 11D proclamation for Ron Glodich?
So moved. Support.
Any discussion? And I'll touch on that a little bit when it comes to that. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. And now we're to their audit presentation with Ms. McBride and Sam.
Good evening, Mayor Vandebosch, City Commission. My name is Curtis McBride, and I'm a CPA and partner at McBride Manley and Company. With me this evening is Samantha Hudson. She is another partner for our firm. We are here to present the results of our audit of the city for June 30, 2022. This is, for me personally, my 22nd year involved in the city's audit, and for Samantha, this is her 14th year. So we do have a lot of experience and history with the city. Before I get into the slides, you guys should all have a copy, a physical handout of my presentation. If you want to follow along that way, I know sometimes that's a little bit easier. First thing I want to talk about is our audit opinion. The city did receive what we call an unmodified audit opinion from our firm. So that means we believe that the financial statements, which you guys should all have, I know you also have an electronic copy, that means that these financial statements are fairly stated and they're in compliance with our professional standards under generally accepted accounting principles as it applies to GASB pronouncements, governmental accounting. Now, I want to clarify what that opinion means. Number one, we're not providing an opinion on the financial health of the city. That's not the primary focus of our audit. Number two, you can receive an unmodified audit opinion and still have what we call internal control findings or accounting deficiencies. And you did have some of those during June 30, 2022. And then thirdly, you can receive an unmodified opinion and still have proposed audit adjustments that must be made to your accounting records in order to produce those financial statements which have the unmodified audit opinion. The key is, as long as we're able to perform enough audit procedures and verify enough information to render that opinion, you can still receive that opinion as long as the city is willing to accept the journal entries and make them to their accounting records for the year. So that's what happened. Moving on to the slides. The first fund I want to talk about is the general fund. Now, the general fund accounts for all monies that are not required to be accounted for in separate funds. So the general fund primarily derives its revenues from property taxes, state shared revenues, and then federal, state, and local grants. So in looking at the general fund balance level, you can see that the general fund finished the year with about $3,128,000 of total assets on hand. It had about $1,100,000 $121,000 of liabilities against those assets to finish the year with an ending fund balance level of about $2,007,000. Now, to put that into perspective, the Michigan Department of Treasury performed a study back in 2019, and they determined that the median fund balance level in relation to total revenues for all cities throughout the state of Michigan was about 42% of annual revenues. And they further found that the median for communities with a population of less than 5,000 residents, so similar to the city of Marine City, was about 54%. So you finished the year June 30, 2022 with an ending fund balance level of about 64% of total annual revenue. So you're a little bit healthier than the median of all cities throughout the state of Michigan, and furthermore, also communities with a population of less than 5,000 residents. In looking at the income statement for the general fund, here we're looking at 2021 compared to 2022. You can see in 2021, you generated about $3,011,000 in general. And then in 2022, you generated about $3,141,000 of total revenues. In looking at expenditures, you actually spent a little bit less in 2022 than you did in 2021. So you spent about $3,195,000 in general in 21, and about $3,168,000 in 2022. A major part of that difference is that back in 2021, the city did have a significant amount of the construction costs for City Hall back in the 2021 fiscal year, about $408,000. So that is the primary difference in expenditures between the 2 years. So focusing on 22, you can see you generated $3,141,000. You spent about $3,168,000. So you had a slight loss or a use of your fund balance level in general of about $27,000. In looking at general fund revenues specifically, again comparing 21 to 22, I did mention in my previous slide that total revenues did go up a little bit from 21 to 22. You can see looking at the allocation that you generated about $1,741,000 in property taxes in 22. So that made up roughly 55% of your annual revenues in general. You can see state of Michigan distributions, so that's primarily your state revenue sharing. You generated about $667,000 of that in 22, or roughly 21% of your annual revenues. Then, of course, looking at the pie chart, you can see that really drives the point home that your general fund is primarily funded through property taxes and state revenue. In looking at the general fund expenditures by type, again comparing 21 to 22, as I mentioned, total expenditures did go down, primarily because the construction costs for City Hall were in 2021. Then looking at some of the other expenditures, for instance, you can see that although salaries did go down from $904,000 to $869,000 in 22, you can see that payroll taxes and benefits actually increased during 2022. And that's primarily because your annual required contribution for your pension increased from 21 to 22. And then you can see capital outlays did go down. Again, that's related to construction of City Hall. And then looking at capital outlay for 2022, you spent about $256,000 in capital outlay in 22. And that's primarily made up of a few things. Part of the camera system costs were in 2022. The TV equipment here in this room were in 2022. The kayak launch was also in 2022. And at the very beginning of the 21-22 fiscal year were the costs associated with the parking lot out here. So those are the primary capital outlay expenditures you did have during 2022. And looking at the pie chart, you can see that the majority of the expenditures are in salaries and related payroll costs. The next two slides, we're getting into some trend analysis, beginning with property tax revenues. So here we're going all the way back to 2013. So you can see in 2013, the city generated about $1,591,000 in property taxes in general. And that number stayed pretty consistent through 2018. And then you can see an uptick in property tax revenues in 2019 when you generated about $1,689,000. And you can see, as I mentioned in my previous slide, you generated about $1,741,000 in property taxes during '22. Now, the interesting thing about this is if we took this back to 2007, you actually generated about $1,937,000 in property taxes back in 2007. So although you see a positive upward trend here in property taxes from 13 through 22, you still generated about $200,000 less in property taxes in 2022 than you did in 2007. Now, that's primarily a result of some of the statutory limitations placed on property taxes. So you have two of them that are working here. You have Proposal A, which places a cap or a limit on individual property tax growth in a given year to the lesser of inflation or 5%. And then you have the Headley Amendment, which comes in and places that same limitation on the city as a whole. So what happened is in 2008 and 2009, property values declined sharply in those years by as much as 20 to 25%. And so obviously property taxes followed suit. There's no limitation in how much property taxes decline in a year. So because of that limitation, that cap on property tax increases in a given year, it's taken the city a long time to climb out of the hole that it experienced in 2008 and 2009. This is not a situation that's unique to the city of Marine City. Most communities in the state of Michigan are in this same situation with property tax revenue. So the bottom line is you've generated about $200,000 less in property taxes than you did in 2007. And as you saw, that's your primary funding source in general. In looking at the 10-year historical fund balance trend for general, again, going back to 2013, you can see you finished 2013 with an ending fund balance level of about $893,000. You can see that number jumped up over $1.1 million at the end of 2016 and went up over $2 million from 2019 through 2022. And as I mentioned in my first slide, you did finish the year 2022 with a $2,007,000 ending fund balance level, or roughly 64% of your annual revenues in general, which is a little bit healthier than most cities throughout the state of Michigan. The next two funds I want to talk about briefly are the street funds. Now, these are a little bit different than general in that these are what we call special revenue funds. We call these special revenue funds because their fund balance levels are restricted for a special purpose, and that's for the maintenance and construction of streets throughout the city. Now, these two funds derive their revenues from distributions from the Michigan Department of Transportation under Public Act 51 of 1951. So in looking at the balance sheet, starting with local streets, you can see it had about $638,000 of total assets on hand at the end of the year. You had about $35,000 of liabilities against those assets to finish the year with an ending fund balance level of about $603,000. Moving over to major streets, you had about $1,231,000 of assets on hand, about $402,000 of liabilities against those assets to finish with an ending fund balance level of about $829,000. Now, the Michigan Department of Treasury and the Michigan Department of Transportation don't really provide recommended fund balance levels for these two funds. But the bottom line is you need to make sure you have enough of a fund balance in these two funds before you commit to any major street projects that you're going to have. And looking at the income statement for these two funds, you can see local streets generated about $302,000 during the year. It spent about $162,000 during the year to have a net increase to its fund balance level of about $140,000. Major streets generated about $374,000. It spent about $479,000, so you actually used about $105,000 of fund balance over in major streets. Now you can see you have capital outlay expenditures in both of these funds. So those are the street projects you had during 2022. So over in local, that's primarily the paving on Union Street as a result of the water main project. Also in major streets, that was the paving of South Main Street. So those were the major construction projects or repair projects you had in streets during the fiscal year ended 2022. The last fund I want to talk about briefly is the Water and Sewer Fund. Now this fund is unique in that it's quite a bit different than general and the streets, in that this is what we refer to as an enterprise fund. So we call it an enterprise fund because it's accounted for similar to a for-profit private company. And the reason for that is the city owns the water and sewer plants and all the major infrastructure assets associated with the plants. It then charges the users to use the system. It's supposed to be a self-sustaining fund. So the bottom line is the city just needs to be careful to make sure that they're charging a sufficient user rate, the commodity charge, to not only cover current operating expenses, but to have monies set aside for future capital improvements, because this is a very capital-intensive fund. And so in looking at the balance sheet or the statement of net position, that really drives that point home. You can see you had about $7,446,000 of assets on hand at the end of the year, but about $4.9 million of that is tied up in an asset called capital assets. So that's the water and sewer plant itself and all the major infrastructure associated with the plants. So those are not current assets. You know, obviously they're not cash, nor can they easily be converted into cash to pay current operating expenses. So you have a significant amount of assets that are tied up in those non-liquid or non-current assets. And looking at liabilities, you had about $3,159,000 of liabilities against those assets. Looking at the major liability categories, you had your net OPEB liability. That's your retirees' health care. That's related to water and sewer at about $1.2 million. Your net pension liability at about $908,000. Then you see you have other long-term debt of about $650,000. That's primarily your drinking water revolving fund bond that actually matures in 2026. So that'll be off your books in the next few years. Looking at the income statement for water and sewer, you can see the fund generated about $2,054,000 of revenues during the year. It spent about $2,107,000, so it had a net loss during the year of $53,000. And again, as I mentioned previously, the thing you just need to focus on with this fund and be careful with is that you're charging and you're setting an appropriate commodity charge, a rate which is sufficient to cover operating expenses. And you would do that theoretically through your budgeting process. So you're going to budget for what you believe expenses are going to be for this fund. You need to make sure that your rate is going to cover those operating expenses. And not only that, but again, you need to set money aside for future capital improvements since it is a capital-intensive fund. I want to briefly talk about our audit process just for a minute here before I get into some of the audit findings. So our audit is performed in all the major accounting functions. So this would be purchasing, cash receipts, utility billing, payroll's a big one, and bank reconciliations. So we're looking at invoices, for instance, for purchasing. We're making sure that it's an expenditure that's appropriate for a municipality. We're making sure that the invoice has been approved, both internally here at the city office, and that eventually the purchase gets to the commission, at the commission level on the schedule of bills, and it's approved at that level. We're looking at utility billing. We're looking at the rates, making sure that the rates being charged are the rates that have been approved by council. Payroll, and of course, we do our year-end reconciliations in order to produce the audited financial statement that you have in front of you. I want to briefly talk about the audit findings. There were 2 letters that you received. One is what we call an internal control letter, and one is what we call a comments and recommendation letter, more like a management type letter. So the ones that I really want to focus on are what I would refer to as systemic issues that I believe need to be addressed immediately. So one of them, I'll address one of the findings on that letter. So one of them is the fact that you need assistance in preparing the financial statements. So that's a common finding for most communities. So under our professional standards, what's supposed to happen in a perfect world is we come in to do the audit and the city provides us with this bound document. Here are our financial statements. And, you auditor, here's your starting point. You go into our accounting records, you issue an opinion, and we just put it right in your financial statement. So according to our standards, if you don't do that, that's an automatic finding So that's the first finding on that internal control letter. One of them that I believe is a systemic problem is not having bank reconciliations performed timely and not having, discrepancies in reconciling items addressed in a timely manner. So the thing about that is that also leads into one of the other findings, and that is not amending the budget on a timely basis. So I think they're related issues. So even if you think about this, even non-accountants understand that, if the bank reconciliation is not performed timely, or there are significant errors associated with the bank account, the majority of accounting transactions all go through that bank account. So if you can't be certain that your bank reconciliation is done or it's correct, you don't know if the property tax number that you're looking at in the financials is correct. You don't know if the state shared revenue number that you're looking at in your monthly financials is accurate, and so forth and so on. So that's absolutely critical that it's remedied as soon as possible. The other one is, again, we talked about the budget amendments. So according to the Michigan Budget Act and the Michigan Budgeting Manual, you are supposed to amend the budget as soon as information is known to you that is going to put you over budget. So theoretically, that means you pass a budget at the beginning of the fiscal year, which is based on estimates and information you have at the time. And then what happens is, as time goes on, I'll give a quick example. Let's say 2 or 3 months into the fiscal year, you realize you need to purchase a street sweeper, for instance, and that street sweeper was never contemplated in the original budget. So as opposed to waiting until you are approaching your overage, or waiting until you are already over budget in that department, at that time is when you really should be making that budget amendment. And if you don't, then you are technically in violation of the Michigan Budget Act. So again, that's something that really needs to be monitored more carefully, and really budget amendments should be made more timely. So those are the two that I would call systemic issues that I think need to be addressed most immediately. I also want to talk about, we have a good relationship with the city. We always have. We come in to do our audit typically right after the fiscal year is over. So we do our first phase typically in July. We are focusing on very specific types of transactions. That's when we're looking at purchasing and cash receipts and payroll. And that really drives the rest of our auditing procedures. We look at those transactions and we do what we call risk assessment. And based on what we find during that time, that drives the auditing procedures we're going to do when we come back in our second phase, which is typically later on in the fall. So all of you know that the audit was submitted late this year. It is due December 31st to the state of Michigan. If it's not submitted at that time, then it's considered delinquent. The two primary reasons it was delinquent is because substantial accounts were not reconciled when we came in for the final phase of our audit. In addition to that, the actuarial reports were not available to us, which impacts the pension and retirees' health care liabilities. We didn't have those reports until mid-December, which is not sufficient time, because once we get those reports, those do require significant adjustments that need to be made to the city's financial records to correct the pension liability and to correct the retirees' health liability. In addition to that, we have to, once we get the full valuation from the retirees' health care and the pension, we have to perform some auditing procedures on the reports. And that full valuation wasn't made available to us until December 20th. So that doesn't provide us with sufficient time to perform appropriate auditing procedures on that information. So the audit was actually submitted to the state of Michigan on January 13th. So it was roughly 2 weeks late. So when your audit is late, you do receive a delinquency notice from the Michigan Department of Treasury. And the notice essentially tells you that you're delinquent and you have 30 days to submit the audit, or we may withhold state revenue sharing. But it never got to that point because it was submitted within 13 days of its original due date. What happens in addition to that is the city has to file what we call a municipal qualifying statement, and that's due at the same time as the audit. It's due on December 31st. You can't file the municipal qualifying statement until your audit is submitted to the state of Michigan. So what ends up happening is once you file that municipal qualifying statement, and I did hear you guys discussing this a little bit at your previous meeting, what happens when the audit is submitted late. But really, it's the municipal qualifying statement. Once you're late, it automatically comes back as not non-qualified status. So when your audit is submitted late, it's an automatic. So what that really means is that the city cannot issue any municipal securities in the next 12 months without prior approval from the Michigan Department of Treasury. It doesn't mean that you can't issue them, so we're talking about bonds here. Basically, you have to go through another process to try to issue a bond, and it only lasts for 12 months, assuming the 2023 audit is submitted timely and there are no other issues that would cause non-qualified status. You would become qualified again next year, and obviously that process would be smoother in the event that you needed to issue some bonds. Any questions?
Can I say something real quick before we get into if anybody's with their questions? Something like that. So we've got several journal entries that were done. And a lot of those are line items. So I don't think, in all fairness, you're prepared to discuss those line item journal entries. So if, on those particular ones, if maybe you had questions, maybe you could follow
Sure.
up with Curtis or,
Admittedly, I don't have them all committed to memory.
yeah.
I think the big picture is this, because we were looking at this. When we started our audit, for instance, the general fund starting point had about $128,000 loss, okay? And then after our auditing procedures and our proposed audit adjustments, it ended up being a $27,000 loss. So we're talking about $100,000 difference, net difference in the loss. So that is substantial. And then, focusing on the number of journal entries, the general fund had 49 proposed audit journal entries this year. In 2021, it was 37. In 2020, it was 7. In 2019 and prior, it was typically on average 2 to 3. So, I mean, that's the summary on the journal entries. The amount of journal entries in the general fund is really a strong indicator of how the accounting records are.
So you said we had a loss of 100 and something thousand, then it come out less than,
Correct. When you went through the slides, the general fund ended up with about a $27,000 loss. That's correct.
Question. On these compliance findings and that, is this normal for the city to have, 4 pages of this?
The answer to that is no.
Okay. And then I have another question. It says on the budget amendments, we were out of compliance with the Michigan Budget Act. Are there any penalties for that or anything?
There are not, other than the compliance finding, and then what ends up happening is the state does give you a notice on the findings. And so what you have to do is submit a corrective action plan to the state, which details, how are you going to address this finding and ensure it doesn't happen in the future.
Okay, and has that been done?
My understanding is it's in process because you get a notice and you have 30 days to
Timing.
submit the corrective action plan.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
how much do you expect property taxes to go up next year? I know you commented on that somewhere, but I couldn't find it.
That's hard to estimate. That would really be coming from assessing.
Well, just on a percentage basis with respect to property
Sure.
tax and inflation and those
Yeah,
numbers.
well, it's a little bit predictable because of those limitations. So,
Right.
it's going to be capped at the lesser of inflation or 5%. So, unfortunately, we all know inflation's been high. So,
Yeah, it was like 8% or something
so
like
it's
that.
likely going to be capped at a much lower percentage increase than 8%.
So 5
Yeah, and there are some unique exceptions to that. If there's a change in ownership of a property, then what we call an uncapping occurs. So then the taxable value will actually go up to its fair market value. So if there's a significant change if there's a lot of sales of property in the city, I guess total property taxes could increase significantly. That would be one thing that would kind of throw a wrench in that estimation.
But everybody's is not going to go up to 5%? I mean, isn't that how it works? It goes the lesser of inflation or
Correct.
5%. So can we expect a 5% increase
And
overall?
that's more of a question for the assessor, but yes, that's what the limitation is. That's correct. Like I said, each property is going to be assessed differently.
And also, you, in one of your other reports, you had suggested that we hire more help in our Treasury Department. Can you just expand a little bit on
Sure.
how you arrived at that?
Well, I believe what we said in our report is we made mention that we believe we made reference to resources and additional training. So we feel, for instance, we've obviously been in contact with Ms. Lasecki throughout the audit, and then subsequent to the audit, and they've been very positive interactions. In our communications with her, it's clear that she has an understanding of accounting concepts. I think it's going to be an adjustment period for governmental accounting. The thing everyone has to remember is governmental accounting is so much different than for-profit private accounting. In fact, many concepts are contrary to what you learn when you're going to school in accounting. So there's going to be a significant adjustment period to get up to speed. So one thing I was going to share with Nicole is that for training, the Michigan Department of Treasury website actually has a learning center. And there's a lot of good material in that learning center. So there are things like, how to account for certain transactions. There are, there's things about benchmarks, and we're talking about, webinars in other education and training material, and these are all free, which makes it even better. So that's primarily what I was referring to. And honestly, when I think about the Treasurer's Department, you had 8 people with their hands in your accounting records during the 2021-22 fiscal year. That's a lot. That department really needs consistency and stability. That's critical. Someone has to be able to gain traction, right? And if they don't, it's going to be really difficult. It's not a plug and play position, and none of them are, and I'm not implying that. But the city of Marine City has 11 accounting funds. It manages its own pension and retirees' health care. And depending on which fund you're working on, the accounting concepts and methods you're using could be different. If you're working in the general fund, when you purchase a capital asset, for instance, it's an expenditure. That's contrary to everything you learned when you're going to school in accounting. But if you're in the water and sewer fund, and you buy that same capital outlay, it gets capitalized on the balance sheet. It's not an expense. So that's a difficult adjustment for someone who doesn't have experience in governmental accounting. So I think the biggest thing is stability and consistency in that department. Someone getting traction, Nicole beginning to get traction, and then starting to make progress. What does progress look like, too? I guess that's probably another question that you would have. So, you guys have the list of the journal entries. You have the list of findings. What are those lists going to look like next year? Are there going to be less than 49 journal entries in the general fund? Are those 2 finding lists going to grow? Are they going to get shorter? And that's the thing that everyone needs to understand. It doesn't happen overnight either. It's not like a flip of a switch. Some of those findings, unfortunately, are spilling over already into the 22-23 fiscal year. They're going to be there. I'm hopeful, and I know all of you are hopeful, that findings list can at least be cut in half. That's what progress looks like. We've had positive communications with Nicole. Great example. One of them was that the tax captures for the Brownfield Authority weren't made for the winter 2021 roll. nor were they made for the 2022 summer roll. However, Nicole and I had a meeting with St. Clair County and the St. Clair County Brownfield Authority to talk about the process, how it can be better on both the city's end and the county's end. And then I'm pretty confident that Nicole isn't going to make the same mistake going forward. I know that's under control, and she caught it up after that meeting. Another one it was a minor one, but equipment rent between the street funds and the general. I know in speaking with Nicole, she discovered that within your accounting software, she's able to import the correct rental rates from MDOT into the accounting software. So these are very little things, but that's what progress looks like. So hopefully things continue to go in that direction. But at this point, the most critical thing are those bank reconciliations. That drives so many other things related to your financials, and without that, you can't be assured that what you're looking at on a monthly basis is accurate.
So your recommendation that we need more help in that office, would you say it's more to do with the overall workload or the instability within the Treasury Department?
Yeah, I would say the stability part's a big one. To have the same person in there is critical. Now, as far as support, you have to be careful in that department, in our opinion, because if it's help from someone, it has to be the right person or the right people. Because if you can throw 2 or 3 people in it, but if they have no experience in governmental accounting, Nicole being already behind right now, she's going to be put further behind because she's going to spend a significant amount of time at catching another person up. So it's actually going to be counterproductive. So you just have to be, if you're going to commit to another person, it has to be a very unique person and someone who can come in and start making a difference right away.
And would you say, our system overall, would you say it's complicated as far as our books and the way that they're run? I keep hearing that
Sure.
There's different ways to do it, and maybe ours is a little bit complicated for people to come in and learn.
I guess the short answer is I would say yes. Quite simply because
But it's compared to other cities.
I would say no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
But
That's
but
what
just
I know
the
it's
fact that
complicated in
a
general.
city.
I'm saying
Sure.
compared to other cities.
Sure.
Okay.
I would say the one layer of complexity that the city has that maybe other communities don't have is probably the pension and retirees. The fact that it manages its own pension and retirees health plans, I would say that's a little unique to the city. But outside of that, no. I would say the accounting is going to be pretty similar.
Okay.
I got a few things. One thing I want to say is, none of us up here, Nicole, we all know you're doing the best you can, okay? None of this, all our questions and concerns aren't a reflection on you trying to get this job done, because we know how difficult it is. And you haven't been here that long. So, I know, Curtis, I'm glad you're saying some of these things, because throughout the last year, I've been bringing up a lot of these things. And I got shot down a number of times about the how we're doing the books and everything else. And unfortunately, it's very unfortunate that now it's fallen out into place that these things were concerns. So I saw in here that we had one payroll issue with a fraud thing, and it didn't get through. But I guess my thing is we have policies, so you verify with our policies too, because we have a policy, and I went back and looked at it, which we should have been notified, and then an investigation should have been done, and I have no idea whether any of that was done or not. But so that's kind of what you do as far as balancing some of our policies with what you're finding in the
Yes.
system.
Yeah. In that one that you were speaking of, there was an attempted.
Yeah.
They call it a direct deposit fraud. There was an attempted direct deposit fraud by someone trying to impersonate a city employee. It's actually common,
Yeah.
so much so that when I did research on it, the state of New Jersey actually issued something to all of their municipalities saying, "Hey, be on the lookout for this." And apparently, it was a big thing that was happening during the spring and summer of 2022. So what we recommend is that the city implement a cybersecurity training program, just so that there's some training to city employees on what to be aware of, how to, what to look out for, what looks like a fishy email or a fraudulent request, We actually use one at our office called Know Before. It's KNOW, the letter B and the number 4. It's really good. It's a training program. We have to take, everyone in our office has to take tests as a result. And I actually get data. It actually will test people and send out, phishing emails to everyone. And I get data. I can see who my clickers are on a monthly basis. So we recommend that the city does, implement a training program similar to that. Because, again, not to be cliche, and I'm the furthest thing from an IT person, but everyone knows what a firewall is, but there's nothing can replace a human firewall. Don't let it get into the system first. That's the most important thing.
And I know when it comes right down to it, the city is ultimately responsible for all this not getting done properly. If we got help for Nicole and we brought in somebody that was knowledgeable, do you have and I don't mean to put you on the spot, could you give an estimate, how long do you think it would take if you had good people in there that knew what they were doing
Sure.
to try to...
A reasonable expectation
Reasonable, yeah.
to make real progress at probably 6 months.
All right.
Well, Curtis, on that issue, how much support can you provide without crossing over and compromising your independent audit?
Sure, that's a good question. So
Thank you.
we can always we can always answer questions, provide advice when possible. Like you said, we have to be very careful not to cross our line, and just so that everyone understands what I'm talking about here. As an auditor, we have to remain independent with respect to the city. Otherwise, we can't audit the records, because essentially we'd be auditing our own accounting records. So we can't do that. So we have to be very careful. However, we can be available for technical questions. We can have informal conversations, whether it's with, Nicole or city manager or, a council member. But we do have to be careful. There is a limitation on how much we can do. We can't push any buttons, right? We can't push the button. We certainly can never record any transactions in your accounting system, nor can we actually create policies and procedures for you. That's off limits. What we can do, for instance, is share with you, the Michigan Accounting Procedures Manual for local governments. We can share that with you, and then if you want to discuss it with us, we can do that, because they have best practices in that manual, which is really should be what your guidelines are. And then, obviously you would make that a little unique based on what the city has going on, but those are the types of things that we can do. But we do have to be careful to make sure we're not crossing our independence line.
Well, and Lisa, can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
Because I know you have, I asked that for a couple of reasons based on things you've said already, is that your relationship with Nicole seems to work, right? You have a good line of communication. And the other thing that you said that I think the commissioners need to be aware of is that you can't just go to these accounting firms and say, give us some help, because you could get assigned a person who does not know governmental accounting. They're accountants. In the biggest, in the big ball, they're accountants, but they're not governmental accounting specialists. And the one thing the commissioners should listen to what you say is that actually bringing someone who's an accountant but not a government experienced accountant into your organization can actually set you back.
Correct.
So, if I had a recommendation for the commissioners, it would be to, without compromising your independence, to have you spend some time assisting and get a better feel for exactly where we're at and what we need, and then reassess the hiring based on a real analysis of need, as opposed to just getting a CPA off the wall and
Sure.
bringing them in. Does that make sense?
It does. It's actually like your profession. You're not going to have a
Right.
trust and estate lawyer dealing with a criminal case. And,
Well,
I know that's a
I've
kind of
seen
an
some
extreme,
try.
it's an extreme example, but, you get the idea.
Yeah, so I, just for your information, I think that you should consider that
So just to clarify, you're saying you want them to help and clear up things and then get a better idea of where we're at? Is that what you're saying? And then
Well,
evaluate whether we need somebody? I'm confused what you're saying.
It may be that if Curtis, without bridging over his independence,
Right.
could come in on a per fee basis, because you're thinking of bringing somebody else in anyways, probably, work with Nicole, see how that goes, and then really come back to the commission and say, okay, here's what you need, or here's what you don't need. Maybe we're up to speed. Maybe that would be one of the results. But instead of just saying, let's go hire somebody to provide help, let's know exactly what that help looks like. What do we really need, based on Curtis's assessment with Nicole?
I mean, I would agree that we need to be careful about who we're bringing in, absolutely, but I don't think there's a question of need. I mean, for me personally.
I don't either. I think that Curtis could fill that for a month or two here and fine tune what that need actually, what it looks like. And I don't know, Curtis, if you spent one day a week in the office not crossing your boundary,
That would be difficult.
it would be difficult, but I mean, theoretically, would it help? Hey, I just gave you a job.
I'm in tax season.
No, you know what I'm saying.
helping me
You know
out
what
here.
I'm saying is,
I do understand what you're
would you
saying.
be able to report back to the commission and say, okay, here's, instead of just getting a body in there, here's exactly what we need to go look for.
Right, and I think it probably involves having an in-depth conversation with Nicole as the starting point.
Right.
Absolutely. Because like I said, the last several months, it's been just so much focused on getting that audit submitted. That's been obviously the most
So
critical.
Mike, I agree with you. We do need somebody. I don't want to pick the wrong entity again.
Right.
We've already been there.
Yeah. Agreed.
All these changes that we have to make, I mean, now we're starting another budget, which, we're trying to start that budget, and you're gonna be auditing the next year starting around in July. So we're only months away from that to the next audit. I guess my question is, what would happen to us if we had gotten another audit like this one in a row?
I can't answer that with certainty, but it would be similar.
Yeah.
I mean, the state of Michigan, not that I have a lot of experience with this, but from what I've seen from their notices is, I mean, they don't monetarily punish you unless you're severely delinquent on your audit submission, so more than 60 days late. What they do is, like I said, if there are significant audit findings that are compliance findings, they will force you to at least submit to them a corrective action plan. I mean, that seems to be what they do.
Okay.
But obviously, I would discourage, continued findings and significant adjustments.
Yeah, we really need to get this, so this isn't gonna impact, I mean, it will impact our next budget if we can't get enough of this stuff cleared up so that we can see how our books have gone.
Correct.
So that's gonna make it difficult, because we have to start that budget now.
Soon.
Yeah, and so that makes a big deal. So, I appreciate all the hard work you did on this one. I'm sorry to see it in the shape it's in, because I know over the years, all the ones I've been through, I've never seen it to this extent. So we got a lot of work to do to try to get this resolved and get Nicole some help and try to get this resolved so we don't stay in this condition. It's a big deal to me.
I mean, yeah, like reading through this, like your letters and such, I gotta say, they're very difficult to understand. Very difficult.
And I apologize for some of it. The wording has to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And so we certainly understand that, and sometimes it can be frustrating for us.
Just for example, I mean, you have as a heading here, significant audit matters, right?
Correct.
So that doesn't sound good. It sounds like significant
Right.
problems to me.
Right.
And then you go on to the bottom, and the reasons for the audit mandates are like estimates of capital assets, but it's reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. Estimates of delinquent property taxes was
Right.
reasonable. I mean, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like,
Yeah.
you're saying it's reasonable. Is that supposed to say, is it good? And you're just kind of like.
Nope. Unfortunately, we have an auditing standard which requires us to word it that way as the heading. That's literally what I'm trying to tell you.
It's very confusing.
Yeah, right. So a significant. So like what you're referring to is significant could mean we feel it warrants communication, but it may not even be bad. It's just, hey, you should be aware
Okay,
of these, these things.
okay. So when you say reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole, I mean, is there a better statement that you could put there, or is that normal?
No, that's normal.
That's just a norm? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And unfortunately, Mr. Davis, lawyers wrote most of these standards for us.
Mike, you
you go.
are on an issue that has bugged me for 30 years.
Yeah,
And Curtis, correct the community if we're wrong. No audit report, no matter how good you are, reads well.
yeah.
And I always, I say, Mr. Auditor, can you just, pat us on the back and say we did a good job? No, it's not in the wording. So no matter, you could be perfect and you would read it and you'd see the same language.
Yeah,
Right.
it's very odd. So, I mean, because this is confusing and because I've heard some people say it's not that bad and other people say it's terrible, what is a grade? What would you assign us? Just a grade compared to other cities, how bad or how good was our audit?
Let me put it to you this way.
Curtis, as your lawyer.
No,
go ahead.
No. Again, I keep going back to the general fund. The general fund, if it's clean, it probably should have less than 10 audit entries.
Right.
49,
Okay.
compared to 10. The audit findings, there's always going to be one because I'll be the first to tell you that we don't have a single client that can hand us this book. So that finding is going to be there. Outside of that, if there's only one finding or two other findings, I would say that's relatively clean. So, I mean, that's the benchmark.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'd just like to thank you again, Nicole. I know that was a tough row to hoe, and I thank you for sticking in with it, and, I know you're learning, and again, Curtis spoke so highly of you. I called with all my questions and everything else, so, yes, again, thank you, and, yeah.
And I would say the same thing, too. I think you're doing a great job. Please don't let this seem like it's reflection or anything. And Curtis as well, when I called and we talked about things, he also had great things to say about you, so. Please.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, commissioners.
All right.
Thank you.
And can I have a motion to receive and file the audit report?
So moved. Support.
Any discussion?
Thanks again, you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Now we're at public comment. Anyone is welcome to address the city commission. Please state your name. Limit your comment to 5 minutes. The commission will not respond, but will follow up as necessary. Anybody like to speak?
Well, good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Roland Walker, 519 South Elizabeth Street, 35-year resident of our beautiful town of Marine City. 5 children, went through the school system here in Marine City. And I'm here to speak on the same subject, more or less, with some additions of what I talked about at the last meeting. I think everybody's aware of my background. I'm a police chief, retired, 40 years in law enforcement, DARE officer, narcotics. Ran an 80-man police department with $16 million budget, and I have a lot of experience in law enforcement. On that, being a member of Southeastern Michigan Chiefs Association, the Michigan Chiefs Association, Macomb County Chiefs Association, I've interacted with lots of law enforcement people. My brother is a retired police chief, and I currently work at a high school in Macomb County as a safety officer at the school. So I'm really concerned. I'm going to just focus again on the kids, and I have a couple other things that I want to mention in addition to that. The biggest concern that we're experiencing with kids is the edibles. There's really no way to control that. It gets into the schools, it gets into the neighborhoods, Parents, if you, again, go online, Washington State, read about the poison control, go into Colorado, talk about kids in the emergency rooms, toddlers getting them, kindergartners bringing them into school. It's really gets to be a real problem. And I understand they're going to be around. Chesterfield, Port Huron's working on getting some dispensaries. Yeah, it's going to be around, but we don't want it in our town. It's a candy store in our town. Kids walk by it, people walk by it, they look at it. It's something that is not something we need in our beautiful town of a nice beach, a river, theaters, all the things that we have that are progressing. We don't need it. I contacted law enforcement and city officials in Marysville, St. Clair, Algonac. They're all opposed to it. It's not even on their docket. They're not even discussing it. So I don't think we need to be the one community along the river that stands out that we're going to be the pot dispensary area for our area. There was talk there could be as many as 5, 2, 3, 1, hard to say. So it's really important that as a community we look hard at that. If you picked up the Detroit newspaper today, headlines out of Lansing. The FBI is investigating the head of the Speaker of the House for what? Marijuana licenses. It's a problem. Also, Port Huron, they're in court. Other cities are in court, spending their city funds to defend how their licenses are issued. There's a lot of big money behind marijuana and weed, and it's being pushed in a lot of areas. It leads to legal, political battles, those kinds of things. There's a lot of communities that are standing tall. My community of Shelby Township, 80,000 people, no marijuana shops. They're not going to get any marijuana shops because all the politicians speak loudly and clearly and say we're not having it. And that's what we need to do in this town. That's really important that we do that. I want to talk about, we spent a long time, and I'll have these, you can pass these down to the commissioners. The last commission meeting, we talked about having a town hall on the 31st, excuse me, I left the microphone, on the 31st, so me and a lot of the people that I'm associated with went to talk to business people, pastors, people in church. We passed out about 100. I talked to 50 people personally. We're all set up. It gets canceled. Now, I don't know what your bylaws are. I don't know what your charter reads, but if the commission sets a date, isn't the date the date? Isn't it solid, or is it just gets canceled? So I'd like somebody, maybe the city attorney can address that later, exactly how a meeting gets canceled when we're supposed to have a large turnout. So I got to spend time calling people, tell them, you know, that they can't make it. Fentanyl, 80 to 100,000 people are going to die. You don't like it, people don't like to hear it, they call it reefer madness and all this. I don't care, it's a gateway drug. It's an absolute gateway drug for young kids. Most of the people get involved in heroin and fentanyl are smoking pot or doing pot when they're young people. So we can make a little bit of a dent. We're not going to cure the drug problem, I get that. But in our town, we can send a message that we don't approve of that. And we send a message to our kids. It's really, really important that we do that. What I'd like the commission to do, maybe at their next meeting set an agenda, I would like them to go ahead and do a referendum and support our ban from 2 years ago that said that we were not going to have marijuana shops in town. So I'd like the board to address that issue so that you can go on record and we know where you stand on opposing pot and weed shops coming into our town. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Cheryl Ross. I live on South Parker. I come today with some questions for our commission, for the mayor and our commission. Pardon me if I'm reading them. I just want to, I know sometimes, if not, my emotions get me off track, so I want to stay on. But first of all, it's, you know, you may consider this old news. I know it's only been a short time, but not to me and many others in our community. With the termination of Holly without really just cause. And really, it had to be, it made me thinking, I was away when that happened, but I watched the video. And it was like, all of a sudden the meeting started, and it was like everything had all been predestined. It was already done. So I'm like, how could that happen? Because I can't imagine that it doesn't violate some meeting ordinances to be able to be meeting policies to everybody met ahead of time, because there's really no discussion. I saw Lisa, Commissioner Hendricks had the sheet with listing on it, but when asked for facts, didn't have any. And when the vote went right there, wasn't like people talked about it. So it just made me wonder, and I can't believe I'm not the only person that wonders, how did that come to happen so fast? And even Commissioner Hendrick already had predetermined and brought to the meeting that Police Chief Haslip was going to take over as the interim city manager. So it just sort of made me wonder how could this all be when usually everything would be above board and talked at the meeting. But it just seems like there was a lot of discussions had to gone on ahead of time, and I just really makes me curious, which I hate to think that our government officials would do that, but it just makes me wonder how it's all possible. And, you know, and I think the other thing that just bothered me, and I wasn't going to bother to mention it, but knowing how, because I work in different boards in the town, and how hard the people in the city work, to that comment that Commissioner Rowark made about how people are all dispensable. And maybe it was in the heat of emotion, you didn't mean it, but the fact that even was said, I look at how to try to, if already, you know, the people work so hard, and then when something like that comes up. So it just makes me wonder, are you guys prepared to man the city phone lines? Because if, you know, you don't make life very easy for our city clerk and poor Michelle and everybody else that's working, that I can't imagine under the situation they're in. I pray to God they all stay and can hang in for it. But if not, I wonder who's going to be, you know, manning the offices to make sure that, you know, when we sit and everybody's gone and there's nobody left to sit and work except for maybe a commissioner to help, to man the phone lines. My biggest question is, and this is a very genuine question, is I would love to know what you guys all stand for. What is your vision of the city? Because I know that in the past, and I've gone to a lot of the meetings and things I've seen, there's been many of you have got opposition to different improvements going on in the town. And the one thing I got to say is, at least with Commissioner Helfrich, I mean, he made it, you know, right from the beginning. And I don't know what your other goals, and I'm sure there are many that are really good ones, but he was right from the beginning. It was good. I knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to get out to work for the pot dispensers. It was one of the things he wanted to believe in, trying to get out there. But I would love to know what the rest of how you see our city to be. Because you say you represent the people, but who are those? Because it's what I hear all the time. We're here to represent the city. We're representing the people. But you can't be representing anyone who's trying to run a business in town, because the negativity only hampers growth, not to mention hurting our current businesses. We've been on a great path of ongoing improvement, but since the election, really the publicity we've gotten has all been negative because of the drama that's going on, because of things that are happening, the negativity. I feel it when you're in town. I feel it in meetings that I'm in. It's just not the way it should be. And Commissioner Rowark, I really pray and hope that you do keep an open mind, being on the Planning Commission, that we look at what's coming into our town, that you do have an open mind. Because, again, I see enough things being said, let's shut this down. And it just makes me worried, you know. My friends and I are all tax-paying home and business owners who are concerned about what's going to be happening, because we love our community. And it just makes you wonder what's going to happen. I'm just worried about the coming few years based on what I've seen in this short period of time, and I really pray that's not what happens. And then lastly, Madam Mayor, you know, since it seems to be that Commissioner Hendrick is more the mayor than you are, I know that you say you're committed to the city, and I do believe it, but I really wish you would stand up to sometimes at least maybe question a little bit more, because it really does seem as though we elected Commissioner Hendrick as our mayor. Because it's like deferred. Everybody looks back to Lisa, looks back to Commissioner Hendrick, and maybe yes, she's been around a while, but I just wish people were acting of their own minds, and it just seems like it's all led by this one group. And like I said, I'm really praying that's not the case. But and then the question, what your priorities are, what your visions are. These aren't rhetorical questions. I would really love to know what you guys do want to see out of our city. So for that, I thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Paul Merchant, 430 South Water Street. I'm just going to piggyback on what Cheryl said and what Roland said. Couple questions that I have for the commission, and I'll just read them off. In the Port Huron Times-Herald, two commissioners that now sit on the board touted themselves as wanting to make our city government more transparent. Yet, last meeting, they and two other commissioners, without a single word of discussion or giving any rational or detailed reason, decided to terminate the contract of our city manager. How is this in any way being transparent? It seems as though those four commissioners that voted in favor of terminating our previous city manager's contract already had their votes coordinated and decided prior to coming to the meeting. If this is true, this would be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. What will the commission do to be open and honest in their communications with us? When will you explain the reasons for the contract termination with specific details? I'm sure the people of Marine City and everyone would like to know those things. But on the other storm front, a few months ago, a private citizen who is now an elected member of the commission accused the previous commission that they were involved with special interest. Who these special interests were or are were never revealed. Last meeting, that same person, now a commissioner, rolled out the red carpet for a well-known cannabis industry insider who came to us threatening to cram cannabis facilities down our throats. If that's not special interest, I'm not sure what is. How is this commission going to stop special interests such as these? And why would the commissioner be so actively pro-weed? Perhaps he is being financially compensated for his efforts. Thank you.
I'm Laura Merchant, business and property owner. I've been approached by many stakeholders in our community who have asked questions and expressed great concerns after seeing what happened on January 16th with the unwarranted termination of Holly Tapman. These are the questions that have been brought to me, and I bring these to you. We are entering a recession and have quite a few properties available for sale and lease. Do you think that was orchestrated on the 16th is going to help fill these spots? What is your plan for damage control? How will you as a commission reinstill confidence with our businesses, residents, visitors, investors, and in the Blue Water area? The January 17th Time-Herald's article entitled "It Should Be Concerning Marine City Commissioner's Oust Chief Administrator" received comments which included, "Always these troubles in Marine City. Nothing new in Marine City politics. They have been inept for as long as I can remember. Too bad Marine City is going down, just when things were looking up. What does the commission have planned in order to change this negative view people have on Marine City, which a few of you have created? With the commission and interim city manager, will the commission and interim city manager be following through with changes to the code of ethics governing commissioners holding office and running for office? This is something that was discussed at the meeting in April of 2022. What are the qualifications of a city manager? Will background checks on people running for or seeking a seat on the commission be added to the code of ethics? Will there be ramifications such as suspension included in the code of ethics for commissioners that are under investigation? There are so many posts on Facebook that paint Marine City in an unfavorable way. Two concerned investors who purchased property in Marine City expressed their concern and apprehensiveness after reading posts on a particular Facebook page. The negativity on this page affects all of us, and something needs to be done. Will provisions be included in the Code of Ethics for commissioners' decorum that spells out how a commissioner should represent the city in a favorable way that promotes goodwill and prosperity? If so, will this include their use and misuse of social media? Side conversations while a commission meeting is in session was a big concern of a commissioner, but yet the same commissioner was guilty of the same thing at the last commission meeting. Will side conversations continue at future meetings? We would like follow-up to all of these questions, as we feel it's necessary for the people of Marine City to have answers and know what the commission is going to do to improve the image of Marine City. You talk about being on the same team. The only team you four know is your team, and that's concerning.
Anyone else? Joe?
Madam Mayor, a lot of the questions I had have already been posed. I got a haircut yesterday outside of town, and you know how hairdressers and barbers chat. Our entire conversation was about the chaos here in Marine City. This is from a barber outside of town. There's a difference between bullying and speaking truth to power. When you badger an employee and then fire her just because you can, that's bullying. When you brand those bullies traitors to the city and the people of Marine City, that's speaking truth to power. By insisting on a hearing in an open meeting, Holly gotcha, because everything you did was in the open and it's on the camera for everyone to see. And everybody's watching. It was clear that there was no debate that indicated prior collusion and probable violation of the Open Meeting Act. That charge is further supported by a vote that followed boom, boom, boom. No discussion. There was no transparency, no support of the charges leveled. All that was captured on video. So now that that little chore is done, what's Commissioner Hendrick going to do? She's going to continue reversing all of the votes that went against her in the past. She's already changed the commission meeting times and dates back to their original times, despite pleas from the admin staff, who do the work involved. With the DPW superintendent leaving, is she going to again call for outsourcing our DPW? What about the police department? That was talked about and voted down. We're going to outsource the police department now too? And bring in marijuana dispensaries. Good plan. Neither of those options, remember, could be done as a cost-saving measure, so we're not going to save money doing it. Too many committees? Oh, what committees are we going to get rid of? Under what pretext? Given the state of our income and our budget, where does the commission plan to get the legal fees and to pay for the legal judgment against the city commissioner, I'm sorry, about the city manager for wrongful dismissal? I sent an email and a letter to Commissioner Clausen to appeal to his conscience, to recall the vote from the previous meeting that dismissed the city manager. That required an agenda amendment, which did not happen, so I guess that's gone the way of the city manager. I'm going to leave you with one thing. Karma's a bitch. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Cheryl Verkaman, previous mayor. On October 26, 2022, just 3 short months ago, I interviewed Holly Tapman, who is still our city manager, on my monthly Mayor Minute TV show on local CTV. Holly and I talked for almost 2 hours about the state of the city, plans for the future, the city's financial status, road projects, and a variety of other subjects. I highly encourage everyone to go on YouTube and view that interview. When Holly first came to Marine City, our financials were a mess. She inherited that mess. She did not create that mess. Holly spent the entire short time that she managed our city to slowly try to correct it. This was all done openly and honestly. You can look back at all the city meetings to view this for yourself. And I just want to remind the commission that the last year, we had 3 treasurers. 3. So you wonder about line entries and that kind of stuff. You got 3 treasurers that were in and out of the books. And Curtis had said something to the effect of that the city financials were systemic. They were not critical. One of the things that really bothers me, and it just was said, is the constant inference on the board, especially coming from you, Lisa Hendricks. You said the word fraud. You gave people out there in the world the impression that there was some fraud done on these financial statements. And thank goodness that Curtis, talked about that and said, no, the fraud was actually an outside person, right? And it happens quite a bit at other communities. So there was no fraud. Ladies and gentlemen, we have auditors that make sure that our financials stay honest and true. Numbers are factual. The only way to make someone suspicious of supposed wrongdoing is to attack those responsible for those financials. I am concerned this is what's going to happen tonight. Our citizens are asking questions about why our city manager was abruptly and unjustly terminated. Not one of the 4 commissioners provided any concrete evidence to justify a termination. Let me remind you, 2 of those commissioners, Commissioner Roehrig and Commissioner Hilfrink, only had 1 meeting in November with Holly as city manager. When they all walked into the crucifixion on Monday, January 16th, 2023, 4 commissioners knew what was going to happen and how they were voting. Remember, Holly had no evaluation, no written or verbal warnings of any kind regarding any part of her responsibilities. Yet, at the last meeting, she was terminated without cause. This act, in and of itself, is very suspicious, and we as taxpayers want to know what the facts are of why we lost the best city manager Marine City has had in a very long time. We want answers. In a small town such as ours, it is hard not to listen to the gossip going around. When I was mayor, I tried very hard to form my own opinions based on my own interactions with people and not listen to the crap. I started hearing negative gossip about Holly early in the summer. Several people told me, unfortunately, that our county commissioner, Dave Vandenbosch, was saying that Holly was not a good fit for Marine City. What was that based on? They didn't work together. Then, just recently, I hear that Dave is telling people to watch tonight's meeting because all kinds of stuff is going to come out. This is so disrespectful and unprofessional. City commissioners and county commissioners need to keep their opinions to themselves. You represent this city. Commissioners should not be on social media posting their opinions and censoring those that disagree. You do not represent Marine City. Me and all the other tax-paying citizens want commissioners that love the city as much as we do. You are destroying our town. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Moving on to item 7. Can I have a motion to approve the city commission meeting minutes of January 16, 2023?
So moved.
Support?
Motion and support, any discussion? All in favor?
Sorry, yes.
Oh.
I was just waiting for anybody else to say anything. So just insofar as the amendment of meeting minutes prior to a meeting and prior to dissemination to the public, and this, Bob, is chiefly a question for you. Prior to a meeting, right, prior to dissemination to the public, prior to posting on our website, where are we with, needing to mark in red and things like that? Is that still required? I just feel concerned that if we were to do something like that, it was discussed, I guess. If we were to do something like that, it would confuse the public and, what's all this stuff? Why is there all this red here? I don't know, it just sort of seems to me like a grade on the clerk. So personally speaking, I mean, I like the way it was done, except that, now there's this random red stuff in the revised minutes that were the first that the public had seen. I don't know, I'm not a fan.
Can I explain what's on the
Yeah,
table?
sorry, go
Is
ahead.
that okay? Can I explain what's on the table?
Yeah.
Okay, what I placed on your table was I became aware that there was a request to amend the motion to have Chief Heslop be the interim city manager, and that motion didn't state completely. Because that information came to me after they were posted to the public,
Sorry.
that's why on your table tonight you have one that says revised with that single revision in red.
Okay.
Anything that was revised before release to the public,
Got it.
my
I
interpretation was the
skimmed.
minutes are still in draft
That's my
form.
bad. Okay.
So, if Bob wants to clarify.
No, like we said in our training, that there's a timeline for the minute taker to get draft minutes completed after a meeting, and then if the minutes are made final and come here, and then there are changes that
Subsequent.
you're supposed to see
Exactly.
the differences, not just new minutes, but you have to see what was changed.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
My only thing with that beforehand is if one person calls and updates it, and she updates it, and then we get a new one, and she doesn't highlight it or do something with it, then I'd have to read through the whole thing of minutes to try to figure out what changed. To me, even if it's parentheses, something so that it shows out, so I don't have to go through 8 pages again to try to figure out
Yeah,
what
Sure.
did somebody
Okay.
change.
But we
That's
can't-
my only concern.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be red.
Yeah.
But we
Can I-
can agree that once delivered to the public, that edit should, the font change should not remain, right? I mean, we just don't want anything, I just want consistency for
In-
when it's released to the public.
In fairness, I did include in the email what changes were specifically being made before they went to the
Yeah.
public.
In mine, yes, I saw everything, you were like, it's here, 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 I
Yeah.
checked, boom, it was done.
But I think in the
I
future,
appreciate that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Russ. I think in the future, though, Shannon and I have spoke about this, and I think you're in agreement with the last meeting where you're gonna line through everything so they see what changes were made, I think is what they're trying to get at, right?
After it goes public, after it's posted public, then the changes, my understanding, should be, say,
Yes.
revised and.
Yes.
So if somebody communicates to me beforehand, that they're still in draft form before they go to the public is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about, Jim. Prior to, when it's in draft form, we only see it. We just had some small note. We thought we said this or that or whatever, or wanted to make a specific point yet. That's all I'm saying. Just I feel that if we were to introduce a red-laden, document to the public, that would look a little funny.
Right.
And anyway, so thank you. I think everybody's clear though now, right? Yeah.
And then Shannon had also, said, appreciated that we get ahead of it
Oh, yeah.
on the front end versus, them coming here and having a bunch of issues.
Thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Next, we have the consent agenda. The consists of the Cotterville sewer rate computation estimate, year-end June 30, 2023. The Cotterville sewer rate computation, year-end June 30, 2022. The Planning Commission annual report. Historical Commission minutes from October 18th, 2022. The Planning Commission minutes from November 14th, 2022. The 300 Broadway Committee minutes from November 28th, 2022. The business license for Marine City Auto Sales. And the business license for SJAF DBA as Ackett's Catering. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda, items A through H.
Support.
Motion and support. Any other discussion?
Just a comment, I guess. I keep hoping I'm gonna see something from UHY on the consent agenda. Bob, do you have any kind of, anything?
Well, you're not gonna see it on a consent agenda, but you will see it on the next agenda.
Okay, perfect.
As a regular potential closed session agenda.
Okay, I was just looking for some communications and what's going on there.
Anything else? Good. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Hilfrink?
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen?
Yes.
Commissioner Rorig?
Yes.
Commissioner Ross?
Yes.
Mayor Vandembosch?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, next, item 9, financial business. We have expenditures including payroll for $507,146.27. Can I have a motion? The expenditures including payroll in the amount of $507,146.27.
Move it as stated.
Support.
Okay, motion and support. Any discussion?
There's a couple things that are on there that people might note. The roads were paved. I talked to Mike about it today, because that's also in the next thing, the preliminary financial statements too. So it'll appear as a, rather large charge, but that's what it is. Anyway, yeah, so go check them out. And then the only other question I had is on 6 of 14, page 6 of 14 on the second one. There was a shipping fee added. That may be a question that I needed to ask Mike, but.
Yeah, that's gonna be a question for Mike.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Sorry, it's a bit further. Anyway, I will ask Mike. I apologize. It wasn't huge, but it insinuated shipping was free at first and then that it wasn't, so, that is all. But again, check out the roads.
Okay, anything else? All right, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hendrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Hilfrink?
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen?
Yes.
Commissioner Rorig?
Yes.
Commissioner Ross?
Yes.
Mayor Vandembosch?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next, we have the preliminary financial statements. Can I have a motion to receive and file the preliminary financial statements?
So moved.
Support?
Motion and support. Any discussion?
See, I just had a quick question on page 13.
13 of,
28. Just wanted to check and see if this is a typo. It might not be, but it's just somewhat coincidental. So on line item for equipment lease, on that page, under the non-motorized transportation, it's 29,053 was the budgeted number. And the balance was 2935. I'm just curious if those numbers didn't get transposed. If it was supposed to be at 53, it might actually be accurate. It's just kind of a weird, that they were exactly. It was 53 instead of 35. So I just to check, I mean, it has this $18 in the green, which is good if it's true. But it was just a weird thing I noticed. I'm sorry. It wasn't to call anybody out on anything. Just if you wouldn't mind checking it, just to make sure. And then again, just for everyone's edification, on 14 of 28, it's the roads were paid for, which reveals itself as something that went over budget for that line item, but that's what it was, and it was something that we didn't anticipate doing earlier in the year. So that is all.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Unfinished business, item A, the 2301 purchasing ordinance. And can I have a motion to adopt and approve the 2301 purchasing ordinance?
I'll
Make,
Go ahead.
make a motion, we approve and adopt ordinance number 23-001.
Support.
Motion and support, any discussion?
Yeah, I got a question. Bob, I know before you had mentioned that this charter and, you know, the section of that charter is pretty outdated. We didn't have an ordinance, and the dollar amounts even weren't, they were too low. Isn't that what you said at another meeting? Is that right?
Yes.
So these are the same. When do we make changes? Because I keep getting conflicting information. When the changes to this, is it tonight we make changes, or do we adopt it and then make changes?
Okay, so as presented, you have a charter. You have not taken action to amend or to revise the charter, although I've given you an extensive procedure on how to do that. You have a charter that's binding, and your charter requires that you have a purchasing ordinance consistent with the charter, and you don't have one. I know, Mike, that this ordinance is gonna change when you change the charter.
Okay.
But right
Makes it a little more
now,
clear.
I'm trying to bring you into compliance with the charter by just having an ordinance on the books. It's kind of the numbers you operate under currently. It was fairly consistent with the policy that you had. A couple wrinkles in the policy that were inconsistent, but mostly wording. You need this ordinance to be in place to remain in compliance with your charter. When we tackle the charter, so will go the ordinance.
Okay. Now, the charter says we don't have to have competitive bidding for professional services.
Correct. It's a may.
So we could,
You always can.
if we, okay. Because, I mean, some of these, I feel like we definitely would have an advantage to try to put them out for a bid. I mean, insurance,
It's always your prerogative. What communities do is they're able to waive competitive bidding for professional services, but you don't have to.
okay.
And then you wanted to know, well, what are the professional services? So I gave you some information on collecting data from different ordinances and from different Michigan State studies about the categories that have appeared as being professional services.
Okay. Yeah, just reading your memo, you know, saying these particular services are not subject to price competition in the usual sense. And like I said, just some of these, I just wouldn't quite agree with that. Some of them, yes, I do understand, you know, there's a very select number of companies that are willing to do it. But I mean, legal services, insurance.
But that list, Mike, is not going into your ordinance.
Okay.
It's, you just want, your ordinance says, your ordinance to bring you in compliance with the charter just says you don't have to bid professional services, right? But it's a May standard.
Okay.
So you can still do it, but we're trying to give some recognition to what those,
I guess, but we're doing, if this is our ordinance and this is what a city manager follows, right? I mean, so why would the city manager come to us and say, well, I think we need to put it out in competitive bidding when the ordinance says you don't have to?
why wouldn't you go to why wouldn't it work in reverse, Mike? Why wouldn't this commission decide when they want to put something out for?
I'm just speaking.
No,
from-
you're right.
Yeah, I understand what you're,
Yep.
yeah. I'm just saying from experience,
So
just
you-
recently, there were some things that we felt, or some people felt shouldn't have happened with the insurance contract.
Right.
And
So then the commission has the right to send anything it wants out for competitive process.
so how do we write this ordinance to
You don't-
prohibit a city manager from going and doing that without our?
You don't make it a shall standard.
Even
So-
though the charter does. The charter says it's a may.
The charter says, but the charter doesn't go on to list
Sure.
what they are.
But, okay, so the issue with this, though, is we didn't know about it before it went out.
I-
And that's.
I understand.
I guess that's what we're getting at is.
I understand.
We need to make sure this comes to us so we can decide whether we want to or not, or.
Well, when contracts come up for renewal,
Yeah.
then the commissioners can say, before we extend the contract, or we do the same contract, let's test the waters on an RFP process.
Yeah. Well, we tried to do that on several, and then they just.
Well, I'm not commenting
All right,
on,
okay.
I just want you to get this, I
Yeah.
really want you to get this ordinance in place so you're in compliance with your charter. And then I know you're gonna work on your charter, and then so will go the ordinance.
So we can do that later then.
Right.
And this is,
There's a lot of things that we've talked about in your charter that need work.
okay, so the ordinance is basically an interpretation of the charter.
No,
No?
it is the charter. I've taken sections, if you follow the ordinance that I gave you, it references the exact charter provision where that language comes from. I didn't use discretion. I gave you an ordinance that follows your charter to the T.
Does the charter actually define professional services?
No.
So that's what I'm saying, that would be the interpretation. Where, I mean, I guess you didn't put it into the ordinance, but
why
that's,
it-
yeah.
why it's not in there.
Okay, that's, yeah,
That's your interpretation.
right. Yeah, that's
Right.
stuff that needs definitely to be cleaned up. I would like to see like a dollar, like there's a $2,000 amount for the purchasing of whatever. I would like to see a dollar amount on professional services too. Whatever, I don't know what an appropriate dollar amount would be, but we would want to give the city manager some latitude with various things, but when it comes to a certain level, it should come to us.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of communities would say, the 2,000 is woefully low for, do you really want to hear everything that costs $2,000?
Yeah.
Your commission meetings will be filled with
Right.
$2,000 approvals. But it is what your charter says. So we got to do it, and then
Okay.
we need to change it.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. First is that, hey, Bob, this is the ordinance that puts us in compliance with our charter.
That's all we're doing.
Right. So just for the purpose of having it on the record in the minutes, I had some suggestions. Mike's already mentioned a few for as we do, either amend or redraw our charter, or whatever the proper nomenclature is there, revise.
Right. So when you redo your charter, you'll be redoing this ordinance by
Right.
implication. Right.
Right. I mean, we don't have to, but.
You don't have to, but
Sure
you
sounds like it
likely
would
will.
be. Right. So just again, for the sake of the minutes, I wanted to put in, because we've seen this quite a bit with a lot of the, forcing, or rather, removing competitive bidding that we've had to do because we haven't gotten bids. It's been that, kind of dry of a market that we can't get people bidding on stuff like crazy. But anyway, just, again, to put the comments in that what if a no bid occurs, again, for a future charter suggestion or ordinance suggestion. What if bidders don't reply? What if bidders decline? And then that we also need to, I'd argue, almost annually, or at least determine an interval when we redo the minimums and adjust them.
Yep.
So,
Good thoughts.
thank you for hearing me.
All right. Motion, support, and discussion. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Hilfrank,
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Rory,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Mayor Vandenbosch,
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson.
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, Item 10B, City Manager Committee Resident Application. Can I have a motion to approve the form to apply for the resident seat on the City Manager Search Committee and to set the deadline for the applications for February 8th, 2023 at 12 noon?
So moved.
Support?
Yeah, motion and support. Any discussion?
So we are on day 17 of an allotted 90 given in the charter to select a new city manager.
Correct.
Read through the charter outline for the absence of a city manager. We're already there, so we're almost 20 days in of 90. Anyway, I guess I would like to clarify that if anybody submitted one already, are we going to re-require them to submit with this paper? I mean, that's sort of a question I'd like to air first, so the public knows either if they've already submitted one, do they have to come back and do this? I think that's a little cumbersome if it already, the original one already contained pretty much all this information, right? Just maybe not the deadline.
Mr. Ross, I know Michelle and Shannon had worked on this form. They posted it to the city's website.
Okay.
And I do believe a couple have been already submitted, I do believe, on this form. So I don't think we need to worry about having anybody
Okay,
to
just
resubmit it.
making sure, because I thought for a sec, like a little bit different one, or it had a red, anyway.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is I feel that any motion we make to accept this should also consider that any previously submitted forms should also be accepted.
Perfect.
Yep.
And yes, so that sounds great, the 8th at noon. Please, everybody, if you want to be on the committee, submit your paperwork.
Anything else? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Well, wait, does whoever made the motion want to amend it?
I will amend my motion per Commissioner Ross's comments.
Second still stand?
Yes, it does.
All right, ready? Okay. Commissioner Clausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Rohrig,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Mayor Vandembosch,
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrich.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item 10C, the amended budget schedule. Could I have a motion to approve the amended budget schedule?
So moved.
Support.
I have motion and support. Any discussion?
Yeah, seeing this in front of your face is kind of scary, considering what's going on right now. I mean, when are we gonna have a discussion, I mean, as far as if we want to suggest more help, or is that not a discussion for us to have in the Treasury Department, or, I mean, or is that discussion, or is that just for the department head to do that?
I think
or
it's
the
a
city manager?
discussion we have during the budget meetings to provide Nicole the funding to be able to go out and get somebody should she need that, is my understanding. I mean, just like Bob mentioned earlier, if he was gonna hire Curtis one day a week, right? Or not he, but, you know, we or the city or Nicole were to, you know, effectively hire somebody at some rate during the week, we'd need to allocate that in the budget. So I think the budget sessions is when we would need to do that.
I mean, we're just doing the schedule right now.
No, I get that, I just, you know, I feel like this conversation needs to be had as soon as possible.
Yes. Agreed.
So as it relates to the schedule as is, then any more discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Commissioner Rohrig,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Mayor Vandembosch,
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick,
Yep.
Commissioner Helfrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, we have item 10D, discussion on the structure of the town hall and the reschedule. So, on this one, so can I have a motion too? And then, do we talk about our recommendations first? Put them out there to finalize the one that we're gonna do the motion on, or do you wanna do discussion on that?
Mike, you want?
I mean, yeah, I think we can just open discussion and, I'm assuming make the motion for what's further, yeah, during discussion, yeah.
So, I had a meeting with Mike and with the interim city manager, and we talked about the structure of a town hall meeting and what it would hope to accomplish. I've been very clear with you that as you sit legally where you're at, the purpose of any town hall on an issue would be to receive information as a commission to see if any information leads you to a position where you might want to reconsider your position. So as Mike and Jim and I discussed this, we thought that the first town hall meeting would be a chance for the city commission to hear from those who wanted to speak on the issue of potentially allowing adult use recreational marijuana facilities into the community, how we would structure that and have a town meeting. So we thought that we would set a time and that there would be a sign-in sheet for those wishing to speak, and that we would abide by the sign-in sheet for those who wanted to speak, and those people could speak in the order that they've signed in, and avoid some of the cross communications at the first meeting, and avoid some of the debate. We know there's gonna be polarized positions on this, but allow the commission to hear the wealth of information that is out there. We thought that a second town hall meeting, if the commission wanted to move forward, would be more of bringing in a panel to answer questions that were raised at the first town hall meeting, and that we would arrange to get professionals in on the different aspects of these businesses and have the folks there as a panel to answer questions not only from the commissioners but from the public. And that's how we kind of left it. I think we had a date in mind.
Yeah, it was the 20th, I believe,
6 o'clock.
February?
Yes, yes.
We don't have a location yet. We discussed the need potentially for keeping it here depending, what we thought this is gonna be overcrowded or not. I'm gonna reach out to Washington Life Center to see if we can't get into that as well, but then our concern becomes, do they have the audio-visual capabilities that we have here? But I know we have a projector and a screen here that we can always take over there, so phone calls I gotta make, we'll let you know where it's gonna be.
And then were we gonna set up a moderator for this one, or do we not need one for this, Bob, you think, or?
No, I don't think we need a moderator for this one, but I think we do for the second one.
Okay.
And just so it's clear, this would be akin almost to your public comment, where you as commissioners, you have already taken a position on this issue. You're opening up to hear additional and supplemental information on this topic. And I think you should view the town hall meeting on round one as just an information gathering session to see where you're at. If you hear information that is persuasive or leads you to maybe have a different position, or on the other hand, solidifies your existing position. So you voted unanimously already on this issue, twice. So that's where you're at legally, but it doesn't prevent you from holding a town meeting to hear information.
So at this town, in what you described, people will come in, they will sign up on a sign-in sheet. We will call them in order. They'll have their 5 minutes or their allotted time. And then.
Well, what we'll do is we'll take a look at how long we think a logical meeting is, see how many people signed up. And then whoever is qualified to do the division on this commission can do the math, and then we would allocate the time.
Okay.
I'll bring a calculator.
But no special presentations or anything like that?
No, I think Mike has worked on, I've reviewed an initial presentation of the issue in general that would go first. It's a very neutral position. It kind of lays out all aspects of what's at issue here. I think it's only, how long you think that?
How long is the presentation?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes maybe?
Yeah, maybe 15 tops.
Yeah.
So that would happen, and then we would open up to hear from the public in an orderly manner. I mean, we could the ever strong and presence of our police chief would be here. You see this guy? So I think we could run a good meeting, and I think the community here is good. We can all hear each other's opinion without hopefully drawing contentious cross communications. I think whoever moderates, Madam Mayor, I think you could probably handle it if you're willing. Just keep it in order. Just, people stand there, they talk here, everyone hears what everyone else has to say, and we see if we learn anything.
So, just a question, are you saying the entire commission would be present for that?
Yeah, I think ultimately, this is an action that involves the commissioners. I think you have to be here.
There to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Which you can for informational purposes.
yeah, I think you have to be here, yeah. And it should be posted as a meeting, since the commissioners will be here, and it should be subject to the Open Meetings Act, and we should follow all the rules. Those are my thoughts. You guys are welcome to chime in.
Anybody else have anything else? No, good. I just want to apologize to Mr. Wilkers. It was never our intention to like cancel this 31st date. Our attorney was out of town. There was just details that we needed to work out and make sure it went smoothly and you know, it was organized, and we needed a little more time to do that. But I'm super confident in this, in our town and in our citizenship, that we can have a civil conversation about this. We're all adults. There's no need to yell. There's no need to berate anybody. We can present our opinions without doing so. Yeah. So, and with that, I will make a motion to set up town hall for the 20th of February at 6 o'clock to discuss marijuana facilities in Marine City.
But we don't have a venue yet.
When we post it, it'll be posted with the venue. I mean, if you think this room is sufficient, I don't know.
I don't think so. I think you're better off to use Washington Lane. I mean, we've used it before for like planning meetings and things like that, and we've brought equipment in, and it kind of works better because it gives you more room.
Can I ask the fire
Do we
chief a
have
question?
do we have chairs? More
Fire
chairs
chief,
in here?
what's
or-
the capacity here? This would not be big enough? I mean, I know it was crowded when I did my FOIA training, so it'd probably be more than that?
I'll call this Life Center. I'll get working on that.
I'll support his motion.
All right, I have a motion and support. Any further?
Yeah, I mean, I think the motion should include all the details we just talked about, right? Like that you would act at least as moderator in terms of keeping the meeting in order, right? Keeping people to their time limit. That, I mean, you know, we discussed a general, people should be courteous and nice, but, you know, if we imply Robert's Rules of Order should be followed, that there will be a time limit determined by the number of people who sign in. Bob, you said you would be present, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, just those facets, I think, should be added to the motion personally.
Okay.
I have no problem amending my motion if
I'll support his
Yeah.
amended motion.
All right?
Okay. Nothing else? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Ross?
Yes.
Mayor Van der
As
Bosch?
amended.
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick?
Yep.
Commissioner Hilfring?
yes.
Commissioner Clausen?
Yes.
Commissioner Rory?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, we're on to new business. A, the attorney opinion on social district discussion.
So following our last discussion on this, I worked with the interim city manager. We went through the controlling statutes and determined the process which we will present documents at your second February meeting. For this meeting, we have some critical information that we need to discuss in order to get those documents ready. As you might guess, if we're going to talk about the structure and the implementation legally of a social district, I need information on what the city commission believes should be the social district. And then I need, and we don't think this is an issue, but we're going to need 2 existing business participants to support the social district that are either in within or adjacent to the district that you decide is going to be subject to the social districting. So I'm not saying you have to make that decision tonight, but you might want to discuss tonight. If we're going to create one, we have to know the boundaries, and I need exact boundaries. I can't have, from Bill's Tavern down to Stevie's Pizzeria and then turn right. We're gonna need geographic boundaries for the district,
Need GPS points or just
latitude
It
and
says that
longitude.
signs have to be posted at
Yeah,
all boundaries.
Yeah, no, just boundaries.
Okay.
And then we're gonna have to talk about the signage that has to be enacted in order to create this. So think about it, you can talk about it now, it would be helpful, is, you're gonna create a district where, people can be outdoors, walking and socializing in areas with alcohol.
So procedurally, do we need to make a motion in order to discuss this?
No, because you're really not going to approve anything.
Okay.
this year. So
Yeah,
this
we
is-
just really receive and
This is
file,
really
right?
going to be discussion only.
Okay.
But we got all the documents to a point where, yeah, we understand what we need to do, but we need to start with the fundamental of what's your impression of where this district is, and maybe, what do folks think about that?
I have a question. Jim, have we received any communication from businesses saying they want this?
When I had communications over the summertime relating to our open intux ordinance, I had met with one of the local business owners who said he would rather prefer a social district over the open intux.
Sure.
Moratorium.
Thank you, sir. So he's the only one I've really spoke to.
I mean, my personal opinion is, I think we should request, if there's a business out there who wants this, please send us a letter saying we are interested in a social district, this is something we want, in fact, something we need. We need two at least to even go forward with it. If that desire isn't there, if we don't see the, businesses saying we want this, then it's just, why waste any more of our time to do it? I think we need to see the intent from the businesses that they want this before we spend any more time on this. I mean, I'm all for it if the businesses do want it, but do they want it? I have no idea. And we do need that support from them before we can go too much further, because without knowing what businesses want it, it's pretty hard to set a geographical boundary.
I guess I can reach out to most of the businesses
Yep.
in, I guess, I would prefer maybe you talk about where you would want your social district encompassed, so I'm not chasing my tail to a business that might not be in
Sure.
that certain district.
So you need two businesses that are close by the area?
Well, eventually, when you set up the district, under the law, you have to have two businesses that are adjacent or within.
Correct.
Right, so I think you have to look at it in this step. What do you, as a city, want the district to be? Don't, and then, are there businesses within what you want the district to be that are supportive?
Well, looking at the model of Port Huron, I mean, I would think Water Street would meet where we would look at for a social district, my opinion. That's where most of our establishments are. Maybe stretch it around, if it works, certainly out to Chartier if needed, but we got, that's where most of them are. We would probably get the two right away. That would make sense in that stretch.
That's kind of what Jim had suggested to me.
You may want to include Broadway as well.
Broadway, yes.
So,
You got the Newport there.
Yep.
Yeah.
so, I mean, if that's your general guideline, then I will talk to those businesses along that stretch there and see if anybody is for that.
And I'm just trying to use my mental Google Maps to figure out where another bar might be,
There's
honestly.
Newport, Gars, the little,
Yeah, I mean,
Fish
the
Company,
two
you've got
everything's on
Anita's.
water,
You've
and
got-
then the only other two I can think of is Little on Chartier and
Winery.
Newport on
on Broadway.
Broadway.
you have
So
to-
liquor stores, party stores, yes, but I can't think, because
Pouring in the
Right,
cup.
yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Salt Docks is in
Treasury
Cottrellville.
store.
It's
Yeah.
it's a ways away. Yeah.
And I don't think that type of establishment qualifies.
Okay,
It's gotta be a bar.
got it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had a couple other questions too that might just help the community in
Yeah, go ahead.
understanding, hearing, and thinking about it, but just in reading through the whole thing, so could you tell me what is a Class B hotel?
Surprised you don't know. No, I'm just
Shame on me.
just teasing you. I think that, I'll get the exact definition, but it goes with the level of liquor license that they might have within the context of the hotel
Okay,
operation.
just
Right, every
within
hotel
this,
has a liquor license.
Yeah.
yeah, I believe ours does.
Yeah, it does.
Yes.
Right.
So-
Yours would qualify.
Okay, because it had that as an exemption sometimes.
Yes,
That's why I
yes.
specifically wanted to know what it was. Okay, and then there's a fee that these establishments would need to pay.
Yes.
It was unclear as to whether or not, well, it was clear that you had to create a fund for that fee to go into,
Yes.
but it was unclear as to where that fund necessarily went or could be spent on. So does that go straight to the state, to Lara? Or, and they keep it? Or we could use it, say, to fund signage and other things that would need to be maintained?
I
in
think
terms
there's
of
a split
creating-
there. I'll get you the exact, how that money's managed.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sure they're gonna want some.
They're gonna want some, yeah, you know it, right?
They
but
get some. I can guarantee you they get some.
Yeah.
It would be nice, right, if that, you
Right.
know, because there's a lot to it. We have to put up signs, we have to, you know, have these stickers on the ready that go on cups and everything else.
I mean, their version, when you talk to them, is that, you're getting the benefit of the program. That's what they always,
Right,
that's what
right.
they said to me,
How lucky we are.
Right, right.
Okay, so the fee, it would be nice to have clarity on if the fee could be applied, you know, could get some of it to fund
Yep.
signage, things like that, because that's not gonna be super cheap. And then, could we add to the ordinance, if were we to make one, establishing a social district, that would say require the bars to have a little picture of, you know, the map of the social district, things like this? I was actually thinking it'd be cool if the sticker is the map. You know,
The
it
sticker they
actually-
put on the,
Yeah, the sticker that you put on the cup that says you're
Oh,
in the social
interesting.
district. Clever.
that's interesting.
I don't know, other things like that that would be interesting, I think, to add to an ordinance
Yeah,
if it
we,
would.
we can add a lot of this to the resolution that adopts this.
Sure.
It's just,
I'm just asking, is
kinda-
that
yeah.
even possible, or is
Yeah,
it like
no,
cut
that-
and dried, and nope, you're a social district or you're not, take it or leave it?
yep, no, that's
Okay.
in it.
And then Jim, have you, you know, heard from any of your counterparts, police chiefs and other communities and things like that, that have social districts? Are they troublesome, are they,
Not troublesome, it's actually easier.
okay,
Yeah. So you're not always being the cup police trying to figure out what's in somebody's cup
right,
on certain days, because the way our current ordinance was written, on certain days during certain times, you can have open
Right.
and talk. This way it eliminates anything like that, and we don't have to be the cup police anymore.
perfect.
Saves
Which
us
is
a
what we
lot
want,
of time.
which is what we wanted.
Yes.
Oh, are you all right leaving, though, that other ordinance, which is what was decided at the previous meeting, intact until we figure this out?
Yes. The sooner the better, though, 'cause that's gonna
Understood.
get confusing
Understood.
again. Yes.
Yeah,
And that was actually my next
The
question.
moratorium is, I think I already spoke on that. You shouldn't give that a long life. You
Agreed,
shouldn't have an ordinance and then have a moratorium on its enforcement for very long.
agreed. So how quickly can we do this? Were we to say, you know, have something drafted by the next meeting or 2 meetings? I mean, now that we're meeting
We'll lay out-
twice a month.
We'll lay out the timeframe for the approvals. Is your question, could it be in place by, this summer or this drinking season, if there is such a thing?
More so just, like you said, we want to get this the one that should be under moratorium off the books as soon as possible.
Drinking season?
It is.
So I'm just wondering, is there any statute that you're aware of that would, you know?
No, we'll move, we can move as quickly as the law allows.
I mean, I'd like springish, you know, to be,
Drinking season.
I can have our answer for you by next commission meeting.
Yep.
okay.
Give me time to contact the businesses.
And then in terms of what you wanted us to talk about in light of a, map or area or zone, what we had determined in that, you described it as open intox, ordinance. I think we excluded specifically at the request of, Bill, the beach, because we didn't want people drinking on the beach, potentially getting in the water and other things, right?
Yes.
So we had excluded a few areas, and I think that we should probably continue to do that. I'll admit it, I don't recall rather if it was open to Broadway or Chartier, but I'm not entirely sure on that. But again, I know that we had specifically omitted the beach.
Yes.
So you're thinking whatever you did on the moratorium, make
As a
sure-
basis, but then make sure
have
we
it for
also.
discussion on this.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's all I had.
I have a question. I don't know if you can answer this, Jim, or whatever, but when this happens in these social districts, what about all the cups and the trash? Is there do we need to put more out? Do we need some regulations about it? Because I know where are they gonna all end up?
Hopefully, people do the right thing and they throw them away like they're supposed to.
So does
But
that
we all know
mean
that
that we
doesn't
should have
happen.
more trash cans for them to dispose of them?
Potentially, I guess it all depends on how many businesses want to be involved,
Okay.
If
I just
only
wondered if
two.
you've heard anything.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No. I mean, that's something we can, if we notice that there's a lot of trash, we can talk to Mike and have Mike's put out some extra trash cans, or we'll figure something out.
Okay.
Well, within it is the ability to revoke the social district also, and the license is applied for by the bars, so.
Yes.
It, provides for that. But, when we're making tons of money with these licenses, then we can buy all these trash cans.
Right.
It'll be great.
Ryan's an optimist.
I love it. Hoping.
That was my question.
All right, that's pretty good guidance.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Moving on to 11B, a status update on city-owned property at 300 Broadway, and I think, Jake, you
Yep.
had submitted that.
So I asked this to be put on just to get an idea as to where we were with a few things and is kind of get a roadmap for going forward. So I guess the first question is, where are we at with the fire suppression system and the line that popped over the winter time? I know that, as far as I understand, that was supposed to be a dry line, shouldn't have had water in it, so is the contractor gonna foot the bill to fix it, or are they gonna pay for the damages?
Yeah, I talked to Mike about that one. Mike said that the contractor is going to cover the cost of the repairs.
Okay,
It's too early to determine if there's any damage
Sure.
done, and they're going to replace it with that dry system that was talked about. Yes.
then the next one is, have we contracted or contacted anyone to come and look and see, do we need to do any kind of mold remediation before the temperatures get warm and stuff starts growing really, or do we need to dry it out?
Still too early for that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think they did the best that they could.
Yeah.
Cleaning it up. At this point, I don't know if there's any mold that's gonna grow in there, what kind of job they did. Mike had no idea.
I just didn't know, if there was still moisture someplace that we needed to take care of or not.
No, nobody said anything.
Okay. So, and then, let's see, the next one is, I know when I was in there, a week and a half ago, all the water was still turned off to the building. What do we need to do to at least turn the water on for the toilet and the sinks?
Mike
They're
said
two
that.
separate lines.
Mike said if the fire suppression system is off, then the water can go back on. I'm not sure why the water's not on yet.
Okay,
I can look into that
Okay.
and talk to Mike.
okay, it just made me wonder, because the line to the fire main is different than the line for the rest of the building,
Right.
so.
Right.
Let's see, next is, do we have any kind of schedule for getting electrical power to the new bandstand or to the tree, to light the big tree outside, or just not at this time, or?
Mike said that sideline is running conduit to the bandstand for power, and that they are not providing any power to that tree.
Okay, so the tree basically gonna be dead so we can peel the lights off of it at some
Yes.
point.
Yep.
Did you have a timeline for the bandstand Because I
He
do
did-
know.
he didn't tell me. No, I have no
Friends
idea.
of City Hall was hoping to dedicate it in spring, April? May? So, just.
I don't have a timeline, but
Would be
I'll
handy.
get him on that, yes.
Okay. The next is kind of for us as a whole. I think that we should request the 300 Broadway Committee submit a budget item for inclusion into our city budget process and workshops for what's needed to stabilize the building. Not to refurbish it, but just to keep any damage from getting worse. You know, is there a roof leak that needs to be fixed? You know, I know I mentioned it in my email, maybe we get rid of the asbestos tiles that are still in there. But I think I would recommend that we as a committee or as a commission, give the 300 Broadway Committee an action item to report back a potential budget inclusion by whatever date that, that you feel, you know, you need it to get it into, you know, to include it in the overall city budget. Not, you know, and we can obviously parse it out at that point, but we don't have the information to even look at, then it doesn't exist.
If you're gonna do that, Mr. Bryson, try it by maybe like the middle of March, because that's when I'll be sitting down with all the rest of the department heads trying to finalize the budget. You can have any numbers to me by then.
So,
See when the next 300 Broadway committee is. 27th is what I see of March.
like with March, and Brian, since you're the chairman of that thing,
Sorry, 27th of February too.
so would like the 6th of March be?
That would be perfect, because
Okay.
according to the proposed budget schedule, the week of the 13th, I'm to review and finalize the budget with Nicole. So that would be perfect. Yes.
You know, and my only suggestion for the committee is keep it modest.
What? Of course.
So, the next one is more kind of for Bob. I know there's been the number, you can only have 15 people roll through that building due to ADA, number of bathrooms, et cetera, et cetera. What is the real number of, can the public go in there at all? I mean, I just want to make sure we're on good legal standing before we have another issue or an issue period.
If you don't mind, I can answer this. I talked to Tracy.
Yep.
And according to his guidelines, our building inspector, you can have 15 at a time with the one bathroom that's in there.
With one bathroom.
Yep.
So
right.
does ADA come into that at all, or where does that come into it?
Well, just
That's your job now.
That's where.
to add to that though, there's a bathroom in the teen zone too, which was offered.
Yes.
Right, two bathrooms, I'm sorry. Two bathrooms in the teen zone, which was offered
Well,
up as
here's what I would.
aiding in that number. So would that be 45? I mean,
Well, what we should do is we should take your bathroom number, tell Tracy what it is.
yes.
And let him and I come up with a new answer on the number of people. But 1 to 15 is the current ADA ratio standard.
Okay.
But if you want to tell us that there's more bathrooms and where they are, then we'll put those back in and see what the number is.
And then I guess the kind of follow-on to that is, are there areas of the building that are off limits due to the ADA rules, like the second floor?
Yes. Yeah, and I can have him reissue those guidelines as
Okay,
well.
I just think that everyone needs some very.
So we have one document that says exactly.
Because we
Right.
did have a complaint one time.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah, I
we did.
remember.
Yes, we did.
And
Yep.
it's because the person couldn't access the
Yes.
sections of the
And
building.
that's why I just want everything in one document, so
Okay.
it's, you know,
Yep.
black and white.
Gotcha.
And then the last one I have is, for the 300 Broadway Committee, I'd really like to get I know they're working on it already, but a general vision for what do we see this building as going in the future? How do we get there? Because before you figure out, you know, sorry, my brain's getting ahead of me. You need to know what you want before you figure out how you get it. So I really think we should get a report from the committee detailing, here's our vision for this building. This is the amount, these are the items that need to be taken care of to do it, how much it's gonna cost for these items so it can be parsed out. Are there any grants that may be applicable? Maybe there's grants that have come up in the past that maybe if they come up in the future. You know, obviously the grant piece is a whole bigger ball of worms, but, you know, for envisioning just off the cuff for the grant piece of it, maybe you look at, you know, a year ago there was an architectural grant, or 2 years ago there was a business space making grant, whatever, that might come up again. And here's the rough time of the year that it came up in the past, so we know to look for it in the future. Things of that nature, along with if there's one that's out there now, we obviously need to know about that sooner rather than later. So, again, I would suggest a much longer due date. I think that needs to really be flushed out well, maybe 6 months from now. You know, I think it definitely needs some thought put behind it, but again, that's why we made that committee, is so that they can really get into the nuts and bolts of that.
Yep, and I was gonna save this for Commissioner Privilege, but I can go ahead and address it now. So we did hold our meeting last month, the 300 Broadway Committee. We met with an architect who was able to take us through a lot of the things that the building would require were it to still remain a building that was in the city's hands, which you know, necessitates it having ADA compliancy and things like this. He went over a couple options regarding ADA compliancy that we may be able to tap into. One of those being a wheelchair lift, which only can service one floor. So to get to, you know, basement to first to second, and then up to the stage or mezzanine, you'd need additional ones, but they are significantly cheaper than an elevator. So that was something that, you know, we could bandy about and take a look at. Further to that, though, and the business plan is being updated as well. We're trying to put together a lot of new and more modern numbers based on all the hard work that the Friends of City Hall had done previously. However, just prices have sort of changed, especially in the event venue arena, if you will, since that report was made. And I believe it's Shannon Schwabe. Oh, sorry, Cheryl Zimmer is rewriting it. But Shannon, I thought, was helping out with a few of the numbers. Yeah. Anyway, so that is ongoing. And then a little bit exciting, there is a MEDC just announced a CDBG public gathering space initiative, which could be the absolute perfect grant for this place. And it's for a significant sum of money, so I think that it would be worth going after. And to do that, it opens in mid-February, and you have 60 days to apply. So I am very hopeful that we can execute these plans, business plans, et cetera. There's quite a laundry list of stuff that they expect to see, but I'm hopeful that between the 300 Broadway Committee, Friends of City Hall, the Historical Society, and all the others that contribute to that committee, that we can put something together to put in front of the commission for hopeful approval. So fingers crossed. It's a really great grant. I could provide a link maybe to you.
I've already forwarded it to Michelle.
Well, I don't know. She sent it to me, but I'm saying the link could be put in the minutes, like if somebody wanted to investigate it or wanted to help out in any way. So.
Please send me that link.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Is that grant specifically for municipalities?
Mm-hmm.
So nonprofits can't apply for it?
Correct. The nonprofit could, but a nonprofit could assist a municipality in applying for it. So anyway, exciting stuff. for this, you know, we still need to stabilize the building. I think that's our responsibility in terms of taking ownership of it. So, yeah, agree with everything you brought forth, Jake. And, yeah, there's some really exciting stuff for that. And again, you know, to get that small group tour and just garner interest in this beautiful historic gem that we're lucky enough to have, you know, being able to get people into it and see it and experience it for themselves, I think is really important. And that's what Jake was after, and, you know, trying to get the 3 bathrooms thing rectified. So, thank you, Jake, for putting this on.
So, I mean, do we still see a value in getting a longer-term vision statement, a more
Oh,
in-depth?
that's gonna be needed for applying for
Yeah.
this grant, so, needs to be started in mid-February, if we're to get it, if we're to, you know, apply. And from there, 60 days, so
Yeah.
I would say inside of
February, March, April, so like May,
75 days or so,
Yeah.
right, we will have unquestionably
something.
a plan put together.
You said the grant had to be submitted by mid-February?
Nope, the grant opens in mid.
Oh, opens, gotcha,
And
okay.
then has a 60-day window of application.
Gotcha, okay.
Is that a matching grant?
It is 10%, which is pretty small in terms of grant matching.
Because we have the sale money from Water Street, we haven't decided if that comes back up in
This is true.
April. So we may
Yes.
have some funds, depending on where the commission votes with that, that might be able to help towards that.
Oh, that's all I have with this item, I mean, unless anyone has anything else.
Anything else? Okay, moving on to 11C, the interim city manager contract. Can I have a motion to approve the interim city manager contract between City of Marine City and James Heslop as drafted?
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support, any discussion?
I'm just curious, Bob, did you draft this, or Jim, did you draft it specifically?
We did it together.
All right, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
No discussion?
Looks good.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Vandembosch,
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Hilfring,
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Rory,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
motion carried.
So moving on to the added item 11D, the Ron Glodich proclamation. And last week, Ron Glodich is, and I don't know if everyone's familiar with Ron, the area. Ron was a longtime teacher from 1987 to 2019 at Marine City High School. And he was also a football coach for 33 years. And he has, and I know some are listed on the proclamation, he is in the High School Coaching Hall of Fame. He is in several awards through the Macomb area, the head coach. He was at NFL Coach of the Week, the state, and won state championship, very successful, very positive, always promoted teamwork, positivity, dedication, and he now has written a book. Oh, and he still teaches and coaches part-time at Austin Academy. He has written a book called A Run to the River, talks about all of his duration of his time with Marine City and coaching the football and all the experiences and the positivity, everything that happened. And actually he's gonna be featured in a couple films coming out as well. But it's really shown not only through his career and his coaching and now through the book, a really positive light on Marine City. I spoke, Laura had asked me to pass my information to his promotion, and I talked to her, and she would have liked something if we were able to get it together for him to have from the city at his book signing at the Mariner this Saturday. So I got a hold of, interim city manager Hesla and Shannon and through Michelle, and what they had written up is this proclamation, that can go to Ron for Sunday, or I'm sorry, Saturday. And I'll read it to you. Whereas Ron Glodich dedicated several years of service to the community as an educator and Michigan Hall of Fame football coach from Marine City High School. And whereas Ron Glodich has authored and published his memoir, A Run to the River, a story of community and coaching, staff dedicated to developing the student athlete into a champion on and off the field. Whereas the dedication and hard work of Ron Glodich exemplifies the pride in the heart of the Marine City community, and therefore now be resolved that Mayor, on behalf of the City of Marine City, officially acknowledges and pays special tribute to Ron Glodich for his outstanding achievements and contributions, and encourages all of Marine City's educators, coaches, and students to continue their positive contributions to the community. And then it's affixed with the seal, and then this is what we would be giving to Ron on Saturday at his book signing.
Awesome. I love it. I just wish it said many instead of several years. That's quite a long time.
So we were able to bring this to show everybody what would be presented to Ron.
Cool.
Then.
Well deserved.
Yeah.
And everybody buy his book. Buy a
Yes.
copy.
I think there was a special Marine City edition that you had to pre-order. That date is
I didn't know about
done.
that.
But then I believe they'll have extra, the regular editions there that you could get. All right.
Do we need to vote to receive and file this, or?
I don't I just have the informational on it. We don't need to do anything on that? Okay,
Oh, You're good.
okay.
Looks great.
All you gotta do is sign it.
Perfect.
And then we have no items removed from the consent agenda, and we're on to city manager report.
So it's been a long 17 days, according to Mr. Ross. I lost count, so first I do want to publicly apologize to the CED board. We had a meeting and I had canceled it. I lacked communication with the chairperson. I do apologize for that, but I thought the safety of my staff was more important than that, because we were due for a significant snowstorm, which was, well, it's Michigan. So I do apologize publicly for that. Also attended the 300 Broadway Committee, the Historical Commission, the Pension Board. I've got an update on the DNR Spark Grant reimbursement. I've been in touch with the guy from Six Rivers. Somebody help me with his name.
There's a few.
Brian,
Brian?
thank you.
Yeah.
Brian said that the DNR currently is so understaffed and overwhelmed with work that we will get our reimbursement. It's just a matter of when that's going to happen, and he is diligently working on that. So that money should be coming. I had a staff meeting with the girls at City Hall, and I got to tell you, they bust their butts. They are overwhelmed as well. They've got a lot going on, and they're doing the best they can. I'm trying to offer all the support I can. I'm running back and forth between here and the police department, and I mean, we're all working hard. I also had a Zoom call today with PCE and the MDOT. Mr. Ross, I apologize I didn't get back to you. I saw your email that you wanted to attend this. It was specifically talking about the road diet that's potentially coming into town. I took several notes because they said that our TAP grant wasn't in compliance with what they wanted. Well, the girl from the MDOT was wrong with what she thought we had put in for. So they did make a suggestion that we move it from Fredericks over down to West Boulevard and hit that corner instead of coming straight across a corner. PC is going to make those changes and get it resubmitted. Then to talk about the road diet, it's because there's so many rumors in town about this road diet and nothing is set in stone yet. It's slated for project in 2025, but before they even do it, they need a resolution and support from you folks. And if something that the town doesn't want it and you guys don't want it, they're not going to do it. So it's going to boil down to you know, what you guys want up here, and maybe that's something else we have another town hall on, I don't know. But that's coming in 2025 with some serious talks coming this year, but for sure in 2024, so. And then I went and had coffee with members of the chamber down at Todd's place. Todd and Chris have these functions on Wednesday morning for the businesses. I got to meet the new owner of the purchaser of the Guy Center. He's a good guy, and look forward to working with him. We had some great coffee, some great conversations, and it's been a busy 17 days, so that's about all I got.
I have one quick request. For our next meeting, can we add on to the agenda to discuss the city manager's compensation to ensure that when we go out to look for a new city manager, we're offering an appropriate compensation package per se? I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds now, but just for our next meeting, I think we need to discuss that.
I think we also needed to, thank you, I think we also need to discuss when the committee will start meeting. I mean, we should be able to choose a citizen by the 8th, right?
By the
So we'll
next
have
meeting.
those.
You'll have to do it at the next meeting,
Right. So we'll,
the 16th,
right, so that's
yes.
quite a bit of time chewing into that 90 days. Anyway, and then from there, yeah, we'll need to discuss, you know, at what intervals will the committee start meeting, and go from there. So, but to make that open and to the public and everything else, we need to abide by that.
Were you looking to meet before the 16th? In your group to look at the
It
application?
would not be nice to see the
and get-
applications.
And meet before the 16th, look at the applications, kind of get some guidelines together, then come with something on the 16th?
Well, I mean, we
Little more.
vowed to do everything by the OMA, so we should, you know, if we do it, we need to announce it to the
Yes,
community too.
absolutely.
But yeah, getting them by the 8th. I guess from the 8th to the 16th gives you a little over a week. At least the committee could review, you know, we could review the applicants. That'd be fine.
Could put together what you want in a city manager.
True.
I just want to thank Jim for stepping up to the intern job. I mean, obviously, you knew it wasn't going to be easy, and I can't speak for the whole commission, obviously. I mean, I know I sent you an email already. Any help you need, you know, we make decisions for you guys, and then I think a lot of people out here think, you know, we just leave you to pick up the mess. And I just want to say for me personally, any help you need, whatever, phone calls, research, anything, let me know. And I would hope most people on the commission would be the same.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Yep.
Anything else?
Yeah, just going back to Jim, what you had mentioned, I also thank you for picking up the pieces here, but on the the 2025 MDOT road diet thing, what it is they're gonna do a mill and cap, is my understanding. That's why they were even discussing the road diet, is that they intend to go through Marine City, that stretch of M29 with a mill and cap, and it was at that time frame that we could look into a road diet, which they, you know, like the idea of in terms of safety, in terms of other things. But that was my understanding as to why it was happening. Is that?
That is true.
Okay.
They're gonna mill and cap it. Currently, in the state it is, there's 4 lanes, 11 feet per each lane. What they want to bring it down to is 2 11-foot lanes, north and south, with a 12-foot center turn lane to leave room on the side for a 5-foot bike path.
Got it.
The entire length from Chartier all the way over to the bridge.
Okay.
That's their intentions,
Right. And then the
Bike path on one side or both sides?
both sides.
Both sides.
The only other thing I think would be wise to discuss, and actually a citizen brought it to our attention last meeting or maybe 2 meetings ago, but regarding the wear and tear at the Chartier M29 intersection. I mean, it is like a roller coaster going over that. So anyway, I just, something to keep on our radar when we go into those discussions. No critique, just, you know, it does make sense. It's pretty, it gets a lot of hard use, and it's something we should discuss with MDOT. So again, thanks for looking into that.
No problem.
Okay.
All right, and now we'll move on to Commissioner Privilege, and we'll start with Commissioner Clausen.
I don't have much to say. I know that I got letters from people. I know my neighbors have talked to me, people in the neighborhood. I didn't do anything under having a private meeting on my vote, so it's the way that I talk to my neighbors and the citizens, and that's how I made my decision. Thank you.
Commissioner Bryson?
I have nothing tonight, thank you.
All right. I don't know how to start this. Again, I'm going to reiterate, we really got to try to get on the same team here. Like, all of this divisive division, blue versus red, opposite aisle stuff, we got different opinions, and it's just so unhelpful. Like, we have to try to move forward. You know, we get it. There's some people that are upset in the community about what we did. We understand, and we can't say more than that at this time. It's not because we don't want to. It's not because we're not trying to be transparent. We simply can't. And when that time comes that we can, for me personally, I'll be happy to talk. But right now, we can't. So all of this like blame and like trying to, we got to move forward. We got to move forward. It's so unproductive. Like, we have a lot of really focused people in this town that care a lot, obviously. You can see they're at that podium. We all care. So how can we take that care and move it in the right direction? Because it's not helpful to be battling each other all the time. So I'm going to say personally, for me, I'm going to extend an olive branch. I'm absolutely willing to sit down with you, Joe, Paul, Laura, Cheryl left. I'm willing to sit down with you guys. Let's talk about the vision for the city. Let's come to a compromise. Let's figure out what we want to do here and figure out how we're going to have a way to move forward that's fair for all of us. Okay? Would we be happy? Are either of us going to have exactly what we want in that situation if it happens? Of course not. But that's what compromise is. And we are always saying, federal government, they're always battling each other, not getting anything done. Let's not be like that. Let's try to move forward productively and stop making us all look like dummies.
For 6 years, we had to listen to you, and you insulted us. Are you kidding?
All right. Well, in closing, there's been a lot of attacks on my integrity with the marijuana facilities. And it's pretty ridiculous, I gotta say. I have not had anybody contact me. I have not had anybody offer me money. I simply am looking at the dollars. That's it. The dollars that could be brought to this city and the roads that need to be fixed. That's it. There is nothing in my back pocket for this. And I would appreciate it if people would stop insinuating that, because it's not fair at all. And no, I didn't say one word to Bill about that vote with the city manager. I didn't say one word to Rita. Not one word. Let's move forward. Please, please, stop making the city look so dumb and just let's move forward, please. Thank you.
Commissioner Ross?
Most of my 300 Broadway stuff I already said. Some really exciting stuff coming forward. And yeah, I've always been here for this city. I've always asked you to communicate with us. I've always asked you to communicate with me. I've left my personal phone number on the website. And, regarding all this turmoil, I didn't hear anything about it. So it's difficult for me to understand where some people are coming from, admittedly. However, I can tell you I've always been open, always been honest, and always been a straight shooter with you. So if there's anything you would like me to clarify, in the spirit of absolute openness, I'm happy to, obviously. If there's, something that would prevent me from doing so, I will not. But, yeah, I'm always happy to clarify, and I'm happy to receive any of your emails wanting clarification from any of these things. So please reach out to your commission, all of us. We have our emails, or they will be, right now it's a little bit difficult on the city website because it's like a contact form as opposed to just our emails outwardly. But please contact us and let us know how we're doing, what you see this vision of the city being. And, again, that's democracy. That is what we're here for, to serve at your pleasure. So please, we can't do that without contacting you. If we, hear of some mysterious thing that's happening and we don't even know about it, how are we to serve you? So please, contact us. I have, again, always been open and tried to communicate as clearly and best as I possibly can. And I'm here for you. So, thank you, that's all. Oh, one more thing, sorry. My weather app said it's like some sort of crazy snowmageddon and that there's a winter squall on the way. So everybody, please, please, please be careful out there and be safe. Thanks.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes, thank you. In the future, I'd like to see the city's website revamped. As the citizen said at the last meeting, the emails for the commissioners and mayor and other top officials cannot be found. I didn't find them when I searched for them. The search function also does not return items. It returns items that have little to do with what you requested. I put some parameters in and I got things that didn't apply to any of the words. The person who talked about the streetlights out, you can do it through the site, but the site directs you to the DTE site without telling you you're leaving the site, which is a big no-no in most sites. You don't want to be shuttled off to some other site without knowing about it. So I think we need to look at that in the future. I know we have a lot of other important things right now, but that's something that can be done in the future. Also, I attended the cannabis marijuana, the Zoom meeting that was on, and no matter whatever your preference is, good or bad, for or against, whatever, it had a lot of good information, a lot of things we should think about, a lot of things we should protect ourselves with, whether we say we should have some kind of ordinance or whatever to protect ourselves from people coming in and having votes on the ballot, and then you get whatever you get from that. So we should have some kind of protection. We should definitely think about it. So I think the open meeting is a good idea, so everybody can voice their opinion. And then you need to get the facts. There's a lot of stuff out there that's not factual at all. And so you need to find the facts, and I think those would be good ways to do it. The state has a lot of good information, and I copied down some things. There are also some other organizations, other cities get together, and they're sharing information. So you can see what happened in this town as opposed to this town, as opposed to that town. So we could see, do we want to do this, or do we want to do that, or do we want to whatever. So it was really informative. It was really well done, and for a state meeting, I thought it was really good and informative. So, and be safe out there. It's going to be really cold tonight, so be careful. Thank you.
I was debating if I was going to comment or not. I've been on this board for a little over 12 years, and I've been beat up and I've been accused of a lot of things over the years. But you know what? I just like to remind people, don't listen to the people who are putting out the rumors, the lies, and the misinformation regarding myself in this city. I've always been honest with the public, and I will continue to do my job using facts, not fiction. Please make sure to get your facts. We are all here to move forward. Yes, we're not all going to agree. I have to agree with Mike. I mean, you're not always going to agree, but we're all here for the same thing. We all have maybe different ways of looking at it. But we need to move this city forward. And again, after this poor audit. We've got a lot of work to do to get this city back on track. Thank you.
Most of what I was gonna say has already been said. I won't take up, extra time with that. Focus, we do gotta work together. We gotta learn to agree to disagree. We just gotta keep moving the city forward and doing the best for the city and the residents, businesses, everybody. I'd like to thank, Jim for taking on the extra responsibilities he is, and I'd like to thank the city staff as well. I think that they're doing the best that they can, and I think that they are still doing a great job. I'd like to thank Curtis and Sam and everybody at McBride Manley for their professional work that they do. They're offering to help as much as they can, help get us back on the right track and the right path that we need to. And to remind everybody again, this Saturday at the Mariner for Ron Glodich and his book Run to the River, his memoir about Marine City. It's a very positive book. Actually, it's very good for the community, and I would just encourage everybody to come out there and support that the best they can. Oh, I'm sorry. That's from 10 to 1. Thank you. Yeah, you're very welcome. All right. And with that, next we'll be moving on to closed session.
Jim, do we have like a 5-minute break?
We will.
Oh,
You will.
Yeah.
Let's
Thanks.
make them, yeah.
And I need to get a motion to enter into closed session. We're going to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute.
So moved.
Support?
Motion and support. Any discussion? Roll call?
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrich?
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen?
Yes.
Commissioner Rohrig?
yes.
Commissioner Ross?
Yes.
Mayor Vandenbosch?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Now you get your 5 minutes.
If I can get up.
We have 5 minutes?
Can we have a